Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and we're live streaming today for the NBA Draft Lottery. I am so ready, so excited for the NBA Draft Lottery. This day is so pivotal for so many different NBA franchises. We're going to talk about pretty much every single potential outcome. I plan on streaming here for quite some time as long as the viewers continue to enjoy what we're doing. And make sure if you guys are new to the channel that you hit that like button and also subscribe for more NBA coverage. Joe, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. He says he smashed the like button already. Mark, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here as well. Today is such a big and important day. Alfred Matthews, I'm glad you're ready because I am too. What a great day for the NBA Draft Lottery. And we've got some Pacers love in here. Joe, I believe you're a Pacers fan now. ATG Rico as well says, let's go Pacers. Let's get a little bit of Pacers hype in the chat. Josh in his bag says, yo, looks like he's a big-time Pelicans fan. And that's an awesome team to be a fan of right now. Welcome, everyone, to the live stream that's in here. I'm so excited. Zach says, like, subscribed, and Thunder up. That's awesome to see. Zach Park says, let's go Thunder. And Warriors travel coaster coming in with a let's go Warriors. Obviously not a big day for them in terms of the NBA Draft Lottery, but they are prepping today for their game tomorrow against the Dallas Mavericks, the start of the Western Conference Finals. That'll be a great matchup to watch. A sincere review says, can't wait for the trades to go down during the draft. That's always one of the best parts and one of the most underrated parts. And I'm really excited to find out the order because it gives you kind of an idea of potential moves that could become into fruition. Like, for example, when the Pelicans won the lottery and the Lakers moved up to fourth, I think the Anthony Davis trade became so clear at that point. So maybe today we'll have some big moves that become a little bit more clear once the order is set. Austin Moore says, Thunder. We're getting a lot of Thunder hype in here. I love that. Love to see that. If you're a fan of the Oklahoma City Thunder, go ahead, leave a like on the stream. Mr. J says, lottery gods, shine on Orlando, please. Orlando definitely in need of a top pick this year. We'll see. Lowest they can drop is 6, but I'm sure, knock on wood here, they probably want pick number 1. Phil says, go Spurs, go. A lot of Spurs fans been watching the content lately. Love to see that. Here we have RCI McCorrell says, Rockets, let's go. A lot of Rockets fans as well. I'm glad that we have a lot of different fan bases represented in here. Zach says, let's hope the Thunder have a great day. Mamadou says, I know you're a psychic, so conjure some luck for my Blazers. Mamadou, I've been seeing all your awesome comments throughout all the videos on the channel. Really appreciate the energy you're bringing, not only to our other videos, but also to today's live stream. I'll be praying for your Blazers. We'll see what we can do for them. Ryan, welcome to the stream. Ryan says, basketball gods, please get the Rockets in the top 3. That's what we're going to all have to be praying towards, the basketball gods. By the way, guys, I do have a little bit of a cold. So I will be coughing occasionally. I hope it's not too much of a distraction. I'm going to try and limit it. I do have a little bit of Coca-Cola here to try and drown my cough away. So we'll see if we can do that. Warriors says, Warriors fan. Awesome. Glad to see that. Josh in his bag. Go Pels. Thank you, Lakers, for this pick. Obviously huge that they have the pick here. Now on the ticker here on the bottom line, you're going to see the odds for each team with the first overall selection. Phil says Spurs need to get a top 4 pick. We'll talk about the chances of that. As you can see, they have a 4.5% chance to get pick number 1 and a roughly 20% chance to be picking in the top 4. The Fady says OKC with a little bit of lightning emojis there. That's awesome to see. Glad to have some more Thunder fans in here. A sincere review says, I'd be excited if I was a Thunder fan because they have all the draft picks to trade up for the draft and also free agency. Yes, the Oklahoma City Thunder are in a pretty good spot. I am someone who believes that they could become really good down the road, but there is a lot that they have to do in terms of execution to get the job done. Ryan says, I hope the Spurs get in the top 3, though. Love to see Pop get a top pick here. That would be huge. I think this could be potentially Greg Popovich's last season. But at the same time, it feels like people have been saying that for 5 years. He can coach as long as he wants. The Spurs will let him. We'll see how long he can go. Mr. J says, what is Shaedon Sharpe's ceiling? Seems like the hype is rising. It definitely is. He actually had his pro day last night, and he had a pretty good pro day. Threw down some windmill dunks, between the legs jams, and actually showcased some pretty good shot making talent as well on the perimeter. Hit a bunch of mid-range step back jump shots and shots of that variety. So Shaedon Sharpe, his ceiling is definitely an all-star level player, maybe even higher. So he could become a player that is very transcendent in today's league. But at the same time, I think, it's going to take him a little bit longer to get there just because he is a high school kid at this point. I don't think year one he's going to be anything like an all-star. I don't think he's going to be a rookie of the year candidate necessarily, but I think he's going to show a lot of flashes that put him up there. Expect him to have a season fairly similar to what Jalen Green had, where the first few months are maybe a little bit of a struggle, but then from there, it really starts to pick up what he can be in the NBA. Zach says, we Thunder fans just need one top 3 pick. That'd be huge for us. It definitely would be, specifically in this draft with such great talents like Jaden Ivey, Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, a top 3 selection this year is huge. ATG Rico says Jaden Ivey, the Pacers, it's perfect. Honestly, it feels perfect, right? The Purdue kid staying right there in Indiana, but also to Detroit does make a lot of sense. His grandfather actually played for the Detroit Lions in the NFL. He comes from a long line of athletes in that family. So maybe Detroit fans feel the same way, Rico. Not trying to jinx you here, but definitely something to consider. Mamadou says, keep making great vids and I'll be here. Also get better soon. Thank you. I'm feeling okay. It's just basically my throat is a little raspy and I just have a little bit of a cough. So I'll be clearing my throat a little bit and coughing a little bit. Again, I'm really sorry about that. It obviously sucks a little bit, but I'm trying to get through it because today's a huge day. Phil says, what do you think of the Ayton drama in Phoenix? Well, this kind of had the, writing on the wall here. I think the biggest thing is this has intensified simply because of how the season ended for them in such a terrible loss. It's not like they lost on a game winner or something fluky. They just flat out got outplayed by Dallas, and DeAndre Ayton got out-rebounded by Luka Doncic in the series. So DeAndre Ayton becomes the most expendable player there because Mikal Bridges is such a big part of what they do. They love Cam Johnson. They're not going to give up on CP3 or Devin Booker. So Ayton, I mean, I've been talking about it in a lot of my offseason previews that he could be a player that goes somewhere. Now, in today's live stream, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's very possible we see an Ayton sign and trade, maybe to a team like Portland this offseason or a few other teams as well, like the Oklahoma City Thunder could maybe make a move. I know the Brooklyn Nets, their name's been brought up quite a bit. There's some options out here for Ayton that if Phoenix isn't his landing spot, some other team might be willing to pay him. Warriors Travel Coaster says, if Cleveland Cavaliers was not called for their pick, does that mean they're in the top 4? Yes, it does. And I'm glad you actually asked that because we're going to talk about how the NBA draft lottery works in today's live stream. So stay tuned for that. We're going to go through some of these other comments. I just want to welcome everyone to the stream again. Make sure to hit that like button on the stream if you've been enjoying the content. Joe says Pacers need a forward. Great draft to solve that. It really is. You look at, the Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero, those two are at the top for sure. But then a lot of people, they like to deem Chet Holmgren as a center, and then everyone has the concerns about the weight. I tend to look at him as kind of a tweener 4-5, and I know Indiana fans might be saying, oh, we just had Sabonis and Turner. Do we really want to go to 2 bigs again? And I understand that. But at the same time, Chet Holmgren is a very special talent, so I wouldn't rule him out either for Indiana if they do move up. Phil says Ayton to the Spurs. That's a good landing spot as well. Jalen Green, welcome to the stream, says Jabari Smith to the Rockets. I know this user's been watching a lot of our videos as well, so shout out to them for stopping in here today. Warriors Travel Coaster says, are you going to be live when the draft lottery occurred? I kind of want to know your guys' thoughts. Do you want me to be live for that, or what's exactly your opinion on this? Because I can be if you want me to. I definitely could. I was planning on at least recording a reaction video, but if we want to just make it a live reaction, I'm definitely down for that. So whatever you guys want, I am down for. Comment right now what you would like to see. Mr. J says, Paolo Banchero to the Magic seems like the best fit for us. I think so. Or Jabari Smith, because Smith's upside is so huge, but Banchero makes a lot of sense because of how good of a half-court scorer he is. And I think when you look at Orlando, that's the biggest thing missing, right? I think Orlando needs to get a little bit better at putting the ball in the basket. That's the name of the game. And Paolo Banchero is really, really great at that. Austin Moore says, love how you have the Thunder getting big most of the time with the 12th pick. Most other mocks don't do that, and I completely agree with you. Yeah, they just need to. I love their picks of Giddey. I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think Trey Mann's a good player. Lou Dort's really developed a lot. And you look at this team, and, Derek Favors picked up his player option. There is no surprise there. $10 million. No one else is paying him that in the league. That was a no-brainer. When the news broke on that today, I was like, is this even news? You could have just booked that in stone before the season started this past year even. But they need a big. They need someone who can rim run, can screen and roll. Like if you, and this is a big part of development. Everyone talks about, oh, these young guys need to develop, they need to get better. Part of development is giving them opportunities to actually use their skill sets and get better at what they're good at. And for Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, two players who are really good in the pick and roll, give them a good pick and roll partner like a Mark Williams or a Walker Kessler. And I think you really elevate what this team could become down the road. Joe here says Pacers trading Turner for Ayton makes a lot of sense. We have the cap and assets other teams don't. Wouldn't we be front runners? That's a good point. I think that Turner in a sign and trade for Ayton does make a lot of sense for Phoenix. The one thing for Indiana, though, is I don't know why Indiana should necessarily do that. Yes, Ayton is younger, but I think Miles Turner might just be a better big. He steps out to the three-point line. He's a better shooter than DeAndre Ayton. He's a better rim protector than DeAndre Ayton. You can argue he's just as good of a rebounder as DeAndre Ayton. Like, I don't know why you would move Miles Turner unless you're getting something with DeAndre Ayton here, and I don't know if Phoenix would want to do that either. Obviously, the timeline is important, and that's really the reason why. Like, you do get younger, you fit around Tyrese Halliburton a little bit better. It would be really funny to see the combination of Halliburton and Ayton, something that the Suns could have had they not taken Jalen Smith in front of Tyrese Halliburton. Are you going to stream the NBA draft and NBA finals? Potentially. Probably won't stream the NBA draft just because a lot of people are just, actually watching the NBA draft, so I don't want to take away from that too much. Plus, I always love seeing what Jay Billis has to say because by pick 12, he doesn't know the players that well anymore, which is crazy to me because he calls all the games. But still somehow, he always just resorts to his, their arms go on for days about every single prospect. So it's always fun to me to kind of watch that and make fun of him a little bit. Mamadou Diallo says Ayton for Nurkic, Keon Johnson, and a second. That's not bad. That's a pretty realistic package, honestly. Sam wants to know, will we be live streaming the lottery? Like I said, I want to know what you guys think. We're getting a lot of yeses. And Mamadou wants a live. Okay, sweet. Rico wants a live. Mark Jones wants a live. And Phil probably says yes if I was in full health. You know what? I'll do it. I'll do it for you guys. It's a you-centered podcast and you-centered channel. That's why Utility Sports starts with you, because that's really what's most important to me is what you guys really want. So if you guys want to live, I'll go live. Daniel says, do you like the idea of Spurs trading 20, 25, and 38 for Ochai Agbaji after draft with their own pick? Personally, I think he's perfect for the Spurs. That's not bad, but giving up that many assets for one player, I get the idea here, but at the same time, I'm not super high on Agbaji myself. I think Agbaji is good, and I think he definitely does fit San Antonio, like you're saying here. But at the same time, Daniel, I think that they could look at other options as well. We are getting more lives here as well. Reese Love, glad to have you in here as well. Zach says, I think Paulo and Jabari Smith are the best fit for the Thunder. Then you add Chet, so any of the top 3 picks, and we would be happy. Yeah, that's what I think too. If the Thunder get in the top 3, they're in a great situation. Mr. J says, do you expect Zach Levine to actually leave the Bulls this offseason? Potentially. I made a video last offseason about the potential that Zach Levine, even after signing DeRozan, getting Lonzo Ball, that he would potentially consider leaving if they didn't finish the season super well. And a first-round exit with an aging roster isn't necessarily the best look. Then we have reports coming out that the Bulls are a little nervous about Lonzo Ball's knee. And, it does open itself up to a potential opportunity for Zach Levine to really consider his options as an unrestricted free agent. If I had to 100% bet and put all my money down, I would say Levine's a Bull next year. But I don't think it's 100% done deal at this point. Joe says, to be honest, if Pacers fall a little bit, I'll be okay with it. I'm a big Keegan Murray and Johnny Davis fan. Paulo with Halliburton, my dream, though. Well, exactly right. Indiana, I think they're going to be good. I think the Tyrese Halliburton trade was so awesome for them in kind of recalibrating this franchise. But, moving up is just such a luxury. You look at teams like the Memphis Grizzlies, who they were kind of at a point where we didn't know what the Memphis Grizzlies were ever going to become. They had the 7th best odds the year that they were able to draft Ja Morant 2nd overall. So, moving up is huge for teams. And if the Pacers can move up, it does really accelerate their team. Mary says, yes, do the live. Okay. We're going to do the live. We will do the live. Phil says, Mr. J, Zach Levine will sign with Spurs. That would be awesome to see if Levine was drafted signed by San Antonio. That's an interesting combination there. Carson says, who do you think the Thunder should draft if they get number 1? I think they'd probably take Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren. I could see one or either one of those guys being the draft selection for them, just based on the upside there. That's why Sam Presti went with Josh Giddey. He's going to be looking at the upside. So for me, I think he's going to really be between Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith. Warriors Travel Coaster says, do you expect Jordan Poole or Gary Payton leaving the Warriors? Poole definitely will not. Gary Payton II might, but at the same time, I think it's best for his career that he stays. So I think both of them probably do stay with Golden State. Anthony says, who's going to come to the Knicks? It depends, right? We're still waiting on the draft lottery. So we're going to go through some potential outcomes here. So Anthony, hang with me here for just a few minutes and then we'll get into that. Jamal says, I kind of feel like Jeremy Sohan could have a similar development with the Spurs that DeJounte Murray had. Similar-ish base skills going into it. I get what you're saying here. I don't think Sohan's going to be as skilled offensively as DeJounte was coming out. But I do understand your point here that you're trying to make, Jamal, and I think it's a good one. And I think Sohan has a huge upside to him. I think he's going to be one of the better defensive players from this class. And I think he could become a really sneaky good offensive player in a Draymond Green type of role. I found you says, any new feel about Shaedon Sharpe? I think he's going to go in the top 6 for sure. Maybe top 5 as a lock. And then you could maybe even see like a surprise team. Say Oklahoma City's at 4. I could see them consider him. Like if Oklahoma City's at 3, maybe, and we already have Jabari Smith and Holmgren off the board, I think they would consider Sharpe. Yeah, I don't think Sharpe's going to go 1. I don't think Sharpe's going to go 2. But I think 3 is maybe his potential start point, and I think 5 is maybe the most realistic point. Zach says, as a Thunder fan, I'm nervous for tonight, but also cautiously optimistic. I love that, cautiously optimistic. You have to be. You always have to be cautiously optimistic. No point being pessimistic. It doesn't end up changing the results anyway, so you might as well have some hope here. And that's really what today's all about. It's going to add some hope to some teams. In the day and leading up to it tonight. We are about 5.5 hours away now. Everyone has hope at this point, which is nice. Jamal says, also make sure you guys like the stream. It helps. Well, thank you, Jamal, for that. Please, guys, hit this like button on the stream. Also, subscribe if you are new. Really do appreciate all of you in here. Warriors Travel Coaster wants to know how the draft lottery works. Yes, we'll get to that in just 1 second. Ashley F., a fan of the Sacramento Kings. Welcome, Ashley, to the stream. Glad to have you in here. Phil, Jeremy Sohan has a lot of tools like Kawhi had. He would develop well in San Antonio. Agreed with that. Joe says, what's fair market value for Brogdon? I think he sat last 10 games to facilitate future trade. I think for him, you probably get a back end first, from a team that is ready to make a jump. Right in that 20 to 25 range. Maybe Dallas, maybe the Mavericks would be interested with Jalen Brunson. If they lose out on him, maybe they could look to swing a deal there. Mamadou says Sohan and Davis are going to be steals. Definitely agree with that. Carson says, should the 76ers pay James Harden a max deal? No, not a full super max, just because he will be 37 by the end of it. So that's my one concern. Ashley F. says, as a Kings fan, I'm praying for a top 3 pick. If you were our GM, who would be on your big board? That's a great question, Ashley. For the Kings, I think on my big board, Jabari Smith would be probably right there with Chet Holmgren, 1, 2. And I love Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey's my favorite player in the class. I think he's the best player in this class. So, like, with my own bias there, I would look at Jaden Ivey, but obviously doesn't fit the Kings super well. So you couldn't go wrong with Boncaro either. Even Shaedon Sharpe wouldn't be bad. Zach, is the Thunder 12 pick able to go down or only up? It is able to go down if if Cleveland or Charlotte were to win the lottery, or at least to move up into the top 4. It could go down. It could be as low as 14, but more than likely it will be right at 12. Adam says, Pistons thoughts. Pistons are in a good spot. Cade Cunningham, such a phenomenal pick. That team's really, really good. And I think for Detroit, you're looking at a team that, if they win the lottery tonight, they are in a great, great spot. 1 second here. I'm just going to get a quick drink. Really great question here. What fan base should be the most discouraged if they don't get a top 4 pick? That is a really great question. I think probably Orlando. I think the Orlando Magic should probably be the most disappointed if they don't get a top 4 pick, because I still think that they're the team that needs the lead guy the most. In Houston, you feel pretty good about Jalen Green. Detroit, you feel really good about Cade. Oklahoma City, you at least have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Indiana, you have Tyrese Halliburton. For Orlando, they've got a bunch of good players like Markelle Fultz, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac, if he ever plays basketball again. But you don't have a great player. The hope is Jalen Suggs can become that. And excuse me, guys, sorry. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not sell your stock on Jalen Suggs. I think he's going to take a huge step forward in year 2, but I don't think he's a superstar player. I think he's a very good player. I think he's going to be like Drew Holiday-esque. But again, I think Orlando needs a top 4 pick worse than anyone. Carson says, should the 76ers pay James Harden? I already answered that. I don't think they should, but I think they should pay him a pretty good one. Reese says, how do you think the late first rounders this year compared to other years? There's a lot of depth this year. There's some really good players. And I think there's going to be a lot of good guys. You know, when I'm doing my NBA mock drafts, I'm like, I keep struggling from 15 to 30. I'm like, wow, this guy should have gone earlier. This guy should have gone earlier. This guy should have gone earlier. And that's usually a good sign that this draft is pretty deep. DY says Michael Foster will be a second round steal. Definitely could see that being a pretty good pickup in round 2. Anthony says, who are the New York Knicks going to draft? We'll get there again in just a second. Ryan C says, as a non-Kings fan, I'm hoping you get a top 3 pick because and it means in a couple of years you'll be trading him for peanuts. That's a good one there, Ryan. Funny. Andy says Spurs getting top 4, hopefully. Joe says, what will Magic do with Bamba? He's the hardest player to project this offseason. I think he could leave in free agency. I think they could open up a sign and trade. I think that they could just retain him. He's really the toughest player, I think, to project. Daniel says, I'm kind of hoping for the Blazers to get some luck. I would love to see them draft Ivy to take the keys from Dame and trade him next year to run with Ivy and Simons. That's interesting. I think if they got the first overall pick, they would definitely take either Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren, but that's definitely an interesting take there. Mary says, hoping for Magic top 3. I'd be very disappointed if we fall. Exactly, and that's what I feel about Orlando. I think that they need a top pick worse than anyone. David says, what positions should the Pistons draft? They should draft best player available. For me, Jaden Ivey's the best player in this class. I think that, you know, if they got first pick, I would love to see that. Realistically, though, I don't think they would do that first overall. I think they would probably take Jabari Smith. But, you know, I think that it's just best player available for Detroit because Cade Cunningham is such a good player. He can play at essentially any position, 1 through 3. You don't necessarily have to worry about fit with his play style. Carson says, what is one big trade you would like to see this offseason? I would love to see a move between the Detroit Pistons and Portland Trailblazers where Jeremy Grant gets traded to Portland. That's, I think, one of the ones that I want to see really bad. That's, you know, that's a pretty plain one, though, so I'll try and give you another one here. I would like to see the Phoenix Suns try and swing a sign and trade of DeAndre Ayton to the Utah Jazz for Rudy Gobert. I think that could be a franchise or a league-altering, franchise-altering type of trade that no one's really talking about. Too early to talk about 2023 draft. How good is Wembanyama? It's never too early. Victor Wembanyama is so special. And if you guys have been enjoying the draft content this year, wait until next year because that draft is loaded as well. I'm going to be doing scouting profiles for Victor Wembanyama and probably Scoot Henderson within the next coming weeks. So stay tuned for that because I think the 2023 draft could be special. And Victor Wembanyama is incredible. If you think Holmgren's good and you think Jabari Smith's good, watch out because Victor Wembanyama is going to be incredible. Patrick says, thoughts on Kai Soto? Really good value pick, I think, in the second round for a team. He's talented. I do have questions about his lateral mobility, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. But overall, he's a skilled player, and I know I do have a lot of viewers from the Philippines. So if you guys are watching right now from the Philippines, shout out to you. Mason, welcome to the stream. He says that thumbnail. Yeah, I put all my hard work and effort into that. So hopefully you guys did enjoy the thumbnail today. Make sure to leave a like on the stream as well. Salty Solution says, who are your favorite players who will most likely go undrafted? And this is a great question. And that's a difficult one to answer right now because I think we're in NBA draft combine week here. So a lot can still change on who's going to get drafted. And the back end of the second round is always the hardest to predict, right? If a guy like Isaiah Mobley goes undrafted, I think that's a disservice. I think he's going to be a really nice player in the NBA, specifically as a stretch big. I think he's going to have a nice, little niche role. And there's a few other guys as well. I mean, if Johnny Juzang somehow goes undrafted, he's a good pickup. Ryan Rollins out of Toledo, he's a pretty good guard as well. He had his pro day last night as well, actually. So there's some definite guys that are going to be good players. Chris Dempsey says, what time is the lotto on ESPN? I keep seeing 7 and 8 Eastern time. Yeah, that is what time it is at. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Reese says, what does Chet's offensive thumbnail actually look like? Offensive game, I think you meant to say. Chet's going to play off the ball a lot, but the nice thing is you can use him in a high-low offensively if you have another nice big. The biggest thing here is he's flexible. You don't draft him to be your best offensive player. You draft him to be a really good connecting offensive player and your best defensive player. That's the idea here with Chet Holmgren. Christopher wants to know my thoughts on the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that the Boston Celtics win Game 1 in Miami. Who do you think fits OKC best? Probably Jabari Smith, just given, his skill set. But I think Chet Holmgren would be awesome there as well. Carson says, would the Blazers trade Dame for Harden? No, I do not think so. Good question, though, Carson. David wants to know, do you think a team would give the Pistons a pick for Grant? Yes, for sure, but probably, not this year. I don't think that the Blazers would give a top 10 pick for Grant. I think what they would do is trade a future first for him. DY says, why do you think no high school or JUCO kids sign with Ignite this year? Well, it's still early. Some kids might still change who they're committing to and all that. So I would just give it a little bit of time. And it's possible, too, that people are just looking at G League Ignite as not a great route anymore, which, I could argue that as well. Colin says, from the Uncontested podcast, OKC pick 7 from Portland or Detroit, pick 12 and 30 from OKC. Jeremy Grant. No, I don't love that. I just don't think that's necessarily that great. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get to the NBA draft lottery. So how does the NBA draft lottery work? I do have a video that goes a little bit more in depth on the channel, but specifically here, give me one. All right. Thank you for the patience. For how the NBA draft lottery works, essentially only the top 4 picks are done through the lottery. So, right now, when we look at the odds here, Rockets 14%, Magic 14% chance at 1, Pistons 14% chance. Only 4 teams will end up being in the top 4, obviously, which means only 4 teams have the chance of moving up. So say the Pelicans move up, we will know then that they are a top 4 team. And let's say the Hornets moved up right now. You see they have the 13th best odds. If the Oklahoma City Thunder get called at 13 from the Clippers, we know the Hornets are a top 4 pick. That's what we know. So during the actual NBA draft lottery, if you guys do come back and watch tonight, while I'm live streaming for that, you guys will be able to see everything that I'm seeing. And I'll be able to explain how, if say the Pelicans are supposed to get called in and goes to the Kings, we know the Pelicans moved up to the top 4. Last year when the Raptors had the 7th best odds and moved up, the team that got called to pick 7 was Orlando. And then everyone knew that Toronto moved up into the top 4. At that point, they could be 1 through 4. And the NBA draft lottery itself, they use ping pong balls. There's 1,000 combinations. Each team has a designated amount. So for the Blazers here at 10.5%, that means they have 105 ping pong balls out of the 1,000, or 105 combinations, out of the 1,000 combinations that put them first overall. So that's essentially how it works. I do recommend going to check out that video after today's live stream because it does go more in depth, and I do want to make sure you guys have a better chance at specifically seeing the whole process. It does really explain it very, very well. I spent a lot of time on that video, but hopefully Warriors Travel Coaster that explains it pretty good for you. Ryan says Chet plus Şengün defense, offense, big-to-big passing, barbecue chicken, right? Exactly, and that's what the appeal here for Chet is. He could be a really unique fit next to a bunch of different players. D-Class says, who should the Jazz trade, Gobert or Mitchell? I think the easy answer is neither. You have the best defensive player in the world, arguably, and you have one of the best young incoming stars offensively in Mitchell. The goal here should be revamp the roster around these two because, when you look at 2 really great players, the NBA casual discussion has really turned to, what star do we need to trade? What star needs to get moved? Which star should be where? Think about back in the mid-2000s. The transaction of a Lamar Odom to the Lakers was huge. That's the type of moves that Utah needs to make. If you can make moves to improve your depth, improve your fit around your stars, Everything will go really, really well. And I think Danny Ainge, someone who has made moves for stars before, but he's also made a lot of other good moves not around stars. And I think if we can find a move for Utah that does make sense, that you don't have to trade Gobert or Mitchell, that's the best case scenario. Joe wants to know, will Pacers keep Houston second or trade up like last year when they got Jackson? That's a great question, and I think it kind of depends on how the lottery shakes out tonight. Depending on where they fall, very possible we could see them, have a good reason to move that second round pick. But at the same time, in this year's draft, there could be some good players there. If a guy like Ron Harper Jr. does fall out of the first round, which I think would be a travesty, he would be a great pickup there for Indiana. So I think it's going to depend on how the draft's kind of playing out, how the draft lottery plays out, and exactly who Indiana has circled on their board. Isgak says, if Orlando gets the number one pick, would they trade down? No, I don't think so. I think they would take Jabari Smith, and I think they'd be pretty happy about that. However, a trade down wouldn't be terrible if they really love Paulo Banchero. Dylan says, how far down do you think Shaedon Sharpe drops in this draft? Would love him on my Knicks if we get top 4, but I don't think he falls to 11, which is our projected pick. Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that Shaedon Sharpe's there at 11, unfortunately. So sorry to bring bad news for you, Dylan. I know you're a diehard Knicks fans. I love seeing your comments on some of our other videos as well. But unfortunately, no, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but I don't see him being available for New York. Now we have a question, Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey? And if this is just flat out who's better, I think Jaden Ivey is. I think he's a more skilled player. They both have great athleticism. They're both really great athletically. Shaedon Sharpe is a little bit bigger than Ivey, which is a positive. But at the same time, I think Ivey just, a better ball handler at this point for me, and someone who's better in traffic, which I think is huge, adjusting to the NBA. Des says, thoughts on Kofi Cockburn? He's a really solid prospect, specifically when it comes to a second-round big who's ready to play right away. I think he's going to go in the second round. I said the same thing about Ayo Dosunmu last year, that I thought he was going to be a second-round pick. Everyone got really mad at me about that. And, of course, he ended up going 38th overall to Chicago, which, by the way, that's a second-round pick. And I think Cockburn as well is going to be a second-rounder. He's really, really big. He's a big player. I mean, he's just massive. He's a massive human being. And there's definitely positives to that. A team like Dallas, they only have a first-round pick this year, but there's a bunch of teams that need rebounding. And if you need a big who can rebound the basketball and eat space, he's a really good option there. Zas wants to know, who do you think can be the biggest difference maker for any team that drafts them? Well, outside the top 5 guys with Sharpe and Holmgren and Banchero and Ivey and Smith, because those guys are franchise changers, I want to look at a guy like Ron Harper Jr. from Rutgers, who he's a senior coming out. He's been in the program and got better each and every year. He's phenomenal defensively. Players like him end up having great success in the NBA, and I think become perfect role players. And I think Ron Harper Jr. is going to have a great long career. He's son of 5-time NBA champion Ron Harper, and I think he's going to have a lot of success himself at the NBA level. I will be back again in just 1 second. All right, guys, thank you so much for your patience. Just a quick second off. Terry says, you think Kings will trade their pick if we stay where they are? Possibly. They could be a team to watch for in a Jeremy Grant deal as well. We'll see exactly what goes down with them. Atlanta Ellis says, yo, what's up? Glad to have you in here. He always comes to all of our live streams, so glad to have him in here again. Jamal wants to know, do you think that if Walker Kessler develops that 3-ball, he can be a modern-day Brook Lopez? That's a pretty good comp, actually, because, he's got a similar athletic profile to Brook. He's got similar height and stature to him as well. Brook Lopez is a very good player, and it's hard to do what Brook Lopez does, but I think he could become that. He's such a good rim protector. He's going to be excellent in drop coverage, and he's also going to be someone, if that three-point shot does come along, which, that's a big if for him, but if it does, he becomes a very solid offensive prospect as well. Joe wants to know, who's the best international player this draft? For me, it's between the 2 New Zealand breaker kids, whether that's Ousmane Dieng or Hugo Bassan. I think both of those guys are going to be very good in the NBA. I think Dieng maybe has higher potential, whereas Bassan, I think, is a safer pick because I think he's going to be a really good gravity shooter in today's league. Carson wants to know, how close do you think the Thunder are at being a playoff team again? I think they're way closer than people expect or assume, because the end of every season, they shut down Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they shut down Josh Giddey, they shut down Lou Dort, and that team just stops winning games. If they actually tried their hardest to win a bunch, and if they add a really good player in this year's draft, I think they're relatively close, actually. JJ wants to know, or JJ says, I'll go Banchero over Jabari Smith if OKC gets the first pick. Interesting there. I don't think Sam Presti will do that, but that's an interesting take there, JJ. Austin Garcia wants to know who my top 3 prospects are. And in this order right now, it's Jaden Ivey 1, Chet Holmgren 2, narrowly, very narrowly, over Jabari Smith 3. I think those 3 guys are all super phenomenal players. And I think this draft is very, very loaded, honestly. I think this draft has some really, really great players. Devin says, go Spurs, go. Glad to see some more Spurs fans in here. I already answered this about Orlando. If you guys did put a comment in, just be patient. I am going through all the comments. Just give me a second. You know, there's 150 of you in here, so it does take a little bit to get through all the comments. Hopefully you are enjoying, though. If you are, make sure to smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel for more. What should the Spurs do with their 3 picks here? Nick wants to know. And for me, it's draft best player available and find size. A player I really love for San Antonio, Jalen Duren. I think Jalen Duren's a really, really good prospect and someone that I think is going to be very special down the road. Robert here says, who's the best fit for Pistons' current roster? Chet, Jabari, Banchero, Ivy. For their current roster, the best actual fit? I think you could make an actual case for Ivy because it gives you another ball handler. Look at Dallas this year. With how good Brunson's played next to Luka, you could have your own combination of Cunningham and Ivy's way better than Jalen Brunson. He just is. So even if Cade Cunningham isn't Luka Doncic level, which I don't think he will be, but I think he'll be really, really great. You have those 2 players. That's really special. It's really, really dangerous, really special. I keep calling it fire and ice because you have someone who's, a blazing fast player who can get downhill whenever he wants. And you have a great player who in Cade Cunningham can create a shot whenever, knock down 3 balls, facilitate an offense at an elite level. I mean, those 2 I think would be a really, really great pairing. Mamadou says, I need Ron Harper Jr. to fall to the Blazers. Perfect fit. I think so. Like, that's the type of player you want to build your team around with already having Damian Lillard there. JJ says, who's your second round gem? For me, it's Johnny Juzang. That's a great one. Let me look at my board real quick because I just want to make sure I'm bringing my best thoughts here because I didn't necessarily prepare for the second round as much for this. A guy like in here, a second round player, I think Dalen Terry out of Arizona is a really good option. He's a 6'7" guard who impacts the game in a lot of different ways. He's a consistent ball handler. He's growing as a 3-point shooter as a sophomore. I think he's going to be really nice in the league. I kind of liken him to Terrence Mann, who's been really good for the Los Angeles Clippers. I think Dalen Terry's going to have a very nice NBA career. Joe Mape says, Jazz remind me of Lakers without rings. Kobe stayed, Shaq traded. Yeah, possibly. That's a good comparison there, Joe. Obviously not quite the success the Lakers had, obviously, like you said. Ryan says, do you think Keegan Murray can play the 3 in the NBA, or is he a 4? He's flat out a 4. I do not think he's going to play the 3 at all. I think it's more likely we see him as a small ball 5 at certain times than as a 3 ever. Right? Or Yvonne says, what's up? Glad to have you in here, Yvonne. King Dave says, best realistic case for the Cavs. Well, if that 0.5% chance hits, that's the best case. But realistically for them, best case is you get Colin Sexton back healthy, you roll it back next season and see if you can go a little bit deeper. Shorman says Sharp could go at 4. I definitely think it's a possibility. Mamadou says, how do you feel about Ty Ty? I watched some tape earlier and I'm starting to question why he was ranked in the lottery at the beginning of the year. Part of it is because he's good in the pick and roll. He's a good pick and roll guard, which is already half the battle, right? If you can make reads in the pick and roll, hit the roll man consistently, and knock down open jump shots, it makes you an intriguing prospect. The thing for Ty Ty is he's not the best athlete. He's not the biggest guard either. And he's someone who doesn't shoot the 3 ball with a lot of regularity in terms of the frequency. He has a little bit of Darren Collison to him where he likes to be open to let it fly. And I think that is a negative for sure. But for me, definitely a player to consider near or around the lottery. Mike, I love the name here. Nice try. And he says, should Hawks keep their roster or blow it up? I think they should keep most of their roster. Probably look at a Capella trade. I think John Collins, his name's always in the trade market, so I think they'll consider a deal for him. But we'll see exactly how it goes. Patrick wants to know if Colin Gillespie is going to get drafted. If he does, he'd be really late second round. I think more than likely, though, he goes undrafted. Probably catches on somewhere for the summer league, and then actually plays fairly well in the summer league. Also, right now, tentatively, I have a plan of going to the NBA Summer League this year. So I'm hoping to fly out to Vegas for that and catch that. So this is a great time to tell you guys to subscribe if you want to see, inside coverage for NBA Summer League. I'm really excited for that opportunity, assuming everything comes to fruition with that. Trent says, if Pacers land at 4, who do they take? At 4, this is the thing, right? It depends on who's there. So let's say Smith's gone, Holmgren's gone, and, let's say Banchero's gone. I think they probably take Ivy, but if Ivy's gone, Banchero's there, I think they take Banchero. And if either Chet or Jabari is there, I think they take one of those two guys. And maybe Shaedon Sharpe, maybe. Patrick says, okay, this is the same question as before. Tim says, hey, thoughts on Celtics versus Heat tonight? I think Celtics win narrowly against Miami. I just have too many concerns about Miami's half-court offense here against a really, really elite Boston defense. Ivan says, or Ivan. Sorry, Ivan, if I'm mispronouncing it, because it could go either way. He says, I like to see a Cade Shaedon Sharpe backcourt. That's not bad either. I think that could be a really, really good combination. Jay says best fit for EJ Liddell. I think the Rockets could actually be a really sneaky good fit because you've got some great offensive players there already, specifically Jalen Green. Kevin Porter Jr. is also, developing as a point guard. I think the Rockets would be a really good landing spot for Liddell because I think he would make them more competitive right away. Thoughts on Nikola Jovich? Very talented forward. I think he's going to play more 4 in the NBA than the 3. He's pretty light, so I know why people are looking at him as a small forward, but his lateral foot speed's not great either. I don't think he's going to be able to stay in front of threes. I kind of liken him to a Bojan Bogdanovic a little bit. Now, I think he's got to grow quite a bit offensively. I've also likened him quite a bit to a Danilo Gallinari. So, which is obviously, I'm comparing him to overseas players. It's really hard to get away from doing that. But I think, in terms of physical profile, athleticism, and skill set, I think those two players fit pretty good in terms of comparisons, and they both were really good players. OBJ says, why are people sleeping on Johnny Davis? The way he ended his season, a really, really terrible performance in this final game in the tourney. And that's really the issue with the tournament. You have one really bad game, your team loses, and that's the last little sample size we have from you. Don't worry. I think he's someone who's still going to go in the lottery, so don't worry too much about Johnny Davis. Right here, excuse me 1 second. Let me see here. I had a update issue with my comments, so it scrolled up a little bit. There we go. Dennis here says, do you think Sohan's defense is enough to earn him decent playing time in his first year, or would he need to develop a good shot first? No, I don't think he needs to develop a good shot to get playing time. And part of the issue here, you think about a player like Matisse Thybulle, who, we've seen his playing time really be diminished because of the lack of shooting. The one thing Sohan can do that Matisse Thybulle can is he dribbles the basketball. He can actually act as a playmaker. You put him in the middle of the floor, he's going to make the right read, kind of like a Draymond Green. Now, it's really easy to say someone's like Draymond Green. I don't think he'll be nearly as good as Draymond for sure. But with Sohan here, I think he can be a solid player offensively, even without that three-point shot. I think he can fit a little bit of a role as a 4 in today's league. Daniel says, if my Spurs win the lottery, I'm hoping that instead trade the pick to the Thunder for their 2 lottery picks. Interesting. I think I would keep pick 1, unless, if Oklahoma City has pick 2, maybe I would make that deal. Or maybe pick 3, I would make that deal. But if I won the lottery, I think I would stick at 1 myself. Graham says, do you like Pels taking Mathurin, Davis, Griffin, Daniels, or Sohan at 8? Yeah, I think any of those are pretty decent options. I don't love Dyson Daniels myself. I don't think Dyson Daniels is that good of a player. I understand why people like him, but I just think his offensive half-court, I just get a lot of Frank Ntilikina vibes from him. I'm sorry. I just do, and it's really tough for me to come back from that once I, kind of came to that conclusion. Timothy, why do you think the Rockets, who do you think the Rockets take if they get the first pick? I think they probably would take Jabari Smith. That's just my guess, though. JJ says, you think Mark Williams will be a good fit for the Grizz? Yeah, I think he'd be really good, but I don't think they'll be able to draft him, unfortunately. Question here about Jonathan Isaac. For Isaac, he just wrote his book, the Why I Stand book. I'm not going to get into that too much, but I think he's one of the best defensive players in the league when he plays. The issue is we haven't seen him since the bubble, which feels like forever ago. So I think, realistically, we have to wait and see what Jonathan Isaac's going to become. Welcome, everyone, to the live stream. By the way, 200 of you lovely people in here, so make sure to go smash that like button. Let's try and get as many likes on today's live stream as possible, and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're getting really close to 11,000 subs, and who knows, maybe you could be the 11,000th. Chris B here says, if Spurs move to 4th, should they take best player available or stick with someone else? Probably just take best player available. I think specifically in basketball, we look at, the importance of having the best player in a series or the best player on your team. And that so often is way more important than fit. Look back at when the Portland Trailblazers took Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan, right? Like, that's just a terrible decision. And the Blazers said, oh, we need a center to play next to Clyde. And that ended up playing out terribly. Obviously not every player is going to be Michael Jordan, but I think it's a good example on why you should just take best player instead of, specifically a position, especially that high in the lottery. Like if you're picking top 5. Ivan says, who's a sleeper normally nobody talks about and you think is going to be great first and second round? Hugo Bassan, I think is going to be really, really good. And I think that Ron Harper Jr. is going to be very good. Question about Gabriel Procida. I think Procida is pretty solid. Probably going to see second round selection on him. And would be a pretty worthwhile pick, I think. Norin here says there's a consensus top 5 in this class, yet a lot of people still in the consensus top 4. Yeah, that's the thing here, Norin. A lot of people say this because a lot of people don't know what they're talking about with the NBA draft. They follow a narrative, and the narrative sometimes changes, and people don't realize it right away. So that's partially why. The thing is here, I can tell you I've watched literally every single prospect in this draft. All the early entrants, I'm telling you, I've spent so much time watching these guys, and I tell you right now, other YouTube channels don't. That's just the reality. I've seen some other people's content. I'm not going to call anyone out. I think there's some other really good basketball channels out there, but I think there's some really big channels that, post NBA mock drafts, post NBA draft content that don't specifically know really what they're talking about. Jamal says, what's the realistic range for Jaden Hardy? I've seen draft boards mock him anywhere from 6 to 28. He's not going to go in the 20s. That's way too low. I think anywhere between 11 and 19 is probably the realistic landing spot for Hardy. Millie says, what pick you got the Pistons getting? Let's go ahead and jump into my actual comparison or my actual prediction here now on this. So here it is. Here was my prediction. You're going to see it right here. I think that the Rockets are going to get the first overall pick. I think the Sacramento Kings are going to jump up to number 2. I think the Detroit Pistons will pick 3rd. And I think the San Antonio Spurs will jump up to 4. Obviously, definitely hot takes here for sure. But this is my prediction. This is what I think. Definitely a crazy different turn of events that we could see. But definitely something that I could see playing out. Ashley wants a player comp for Chet. Not really one, which is what makes him so special, right? There's not really a good comparison. We have a question here about Scottie Pippen Jr. sneaking into the second round. No, I don't think so. I think he's had a good year at Vanderbilt again, but I think that Scottie Pippen Jr. probably doesn't get drafted this year. I would guess he goes back to college again. Nobody knows Kai Soto here. Chad, I know Kai Soto. He's a solid prospect. I think he's going to go in the second round. Pretty good asset. And if I was a GM, I would take him just to sell jerseys because they're going to make a lot of money selling his jerseys because he's very, very popular. Ro Bezel says, what are your top 3 3-and-D wings in the draft? So first is AJ Griffin. He's a very intriguing 3-and-D wing. Specifically because even though he's only 6'6", he's got the wingspan that you're looking for, and he knocks down the 3 ball really, really well. He's a little bit better offensively than he is defensively at this point, but I think he can grow in both areas quite a bit. And then you look at like an Ochai Agbaji, who is going to be just the positionally correct player because he's going to be in the right spot at the right time. He's going to make a lot of the right plays. And I think he's just going to be a really, really nice player for sure. And then if you're looking for another one, I mean, I think Ron Harper Jr. I think even though he's not the best three-point shooter, he's just fundamentally really sound. Very, very good defensively. I think he's one of the better defensive wings in this class. And he's a good enough offensive player that he doesn't just have to shoot the three ball. He can put the ball on the deck a little bit. I've continually called him the Jalen Brunson of this year's draft, where he's going to get drafted way too low and he's going to have a great career. And at some point, some team's going to have to pay him pretty good. Mamadou Diallo says, if Davis does fall, I would love to see him in Cleveland or Charlotte. That's a great landing spot. Charlotte's interesting because they do have Book Knight as well. And I think Book Knight's a really, really good prospect. I had Book Knight as a top 7 prospect last year. And I think he's going to end up being very nice. Sebastian says, do you think any young Spurs will take a leap next season? Devin Vassell. I think Vassell's really ready to pop off a little bit. Highest Keegan Murray gets picked, do you think? I think highest would be 5th. But more than likely, I think he goes 6th overall to probably Portland if they don't move up. Fourth coverage says Spurs have 3 firsts. Yes, they do, which is pretty crazy. Kiko wants to know who the Knicks should draft. Well, I think that there's a lot of different ways they could look. They could look at a guard, someone like Dyson Daniels, or maybe a Ty Washington, which doesn't feel great. They could maybe look at a center like Mark Williams or Walker Kessler. And like assuming they don't move up, right? Assuming they're at pick 11. And they could also look at, a variety of wings. There's a lot of different options here for New York, and I think the draft lottery, once it plays out, will give us a better indication on what they're going to look at based on who's above them and below them. Avery says, is this the first draft in a while where someone in the top 5 have pretty holes in their game? Jabari's inside scoring, chest frame, Banchero's sweating and shooting issues, and Sharp's inexperience. No, I mean, last year there was issues within the top 5, like Jalen Green was consistency. And even look back at like Anthony Edwards, like shot selection was really bad for him. LaMelo Ball had all the issues with his father, and not that I'm deeming those as issues, but perceived issues. James Wiseman, played 3 college games. It's pretty often that the top 5 guys have a lot of questions still. So don't worry too much. Interesting here. Temperate Seabass says Devin Vassell going to blow up. I think so as well. I think he's really ready. Evan says, what was your biggest miss last year? My biggest miss last year was Franz Wagner. I was really low on Franz Wagner. I thought he was going to be a good player. I just thought, he's not going to make as much of an impact as he did at Michigan. And I was flat out wrong about it. I feel like I was pretty good last year with my whole big board for the most part. Outside of Franz Wagner, I just terribly missed on. I was really, really off on him, and I thought he was not going to be nearly as impactful as he was. I will be back in just 1 second. All right, we're back now. Warriors Travel Coaster wants to know, do you think Warriors draft Johnny Juzang? Probably not, but it's a possibility for sure. Jay Cook wants to know, if the Pelicans stayed at 8 to 10, who would you realistically see them picking? I would love Jalen Duren for them. It gives them a big upside center who down the road could take the job from Jonas Valanciunas. Otherwise, I could see someone like Dyson Daniels, who's a bigger defensive guard. I don't really love Dyson Daniels myself, but at the end of the day, when I'm mocking something, it doesn't matter if I love the player. It matters if I think the player could get drafted where I'm mocking him. JJ says, what's your take on Pat Bev thrashing Chris Paul on national television? I think it's a little unprofessional, but at the end of the day, it's Pat Bev. You have freedom of speech. You can do that if you want to. Ultimately, Chris Paul's a way better player than Beverly. And obviously, Patrick Beverly wasn't a fan of Chris Paul because he got traded from Houston for Chris Paul. So there's definitely that little bit of history between those two. Not to mention when he pushed Chris Paul in the back. There's a lot of history between those two players. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me. Avery says, will rebuilding teams look for project players instead of NBA-ready players in the hope that they can still be a lottery team next year for Wembanyama? No, I don't think so, because I think this year you just draft the best player you can, because even if you set yourself up to get Wembanyama, at best you have a 14% chance to get pick 1. So, that's something that's 1 in 7. That's a 1 in 7 odds to get at, which isn't very good. So for me, that's my opinion. Here we have a comment saying Wizards first overall pick. Definitely interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Ro Bezel says, I don't see many talking about it yet, but any player trade predictions in the draft? Eric Gordon is a trending name for play-in teams. Yeah, I could also see him ending up on like the Lakers or a few other teams. I was shocked that the Rockets didn't trade him at the deadline, but clearly there wasn't a good enough offer for him. Chris here says, do you think there's any chance of OKC trading their picks if they have a great draft lottery? Maybe. It depends on kind of what you're thinking. It would depend on really what's available to them. We'll talk about that more later. Is AJ Griffin a 3 or 4? I think he's a hybrid 3-4. I think he could do either for me. Christopher wants to know, who should the Pacers draft? I think the Pacers probably would look at, a variety of players. If they move up, they're going to look at the big dogs. But say they're at 5 still, I think they'd start to consider Shaedon Sharpe. Ivy, if he's still there somehow, some way, I don't think he will be. But also you have to look and consider some of the other guys like, say, a Keegan Murray, who could be a really nice 4-man for them. Or they could look at a Benedict Mathurin, who I don't think he's going to be another Dame, but I think he's going to be probably like a Tim Hardaway, Mikal Bridges hybrid, where he does good stuff on both ends of the floor and is a really nice player. Braden says, where do you think Keegan Murray gets drafted? I think probably 6th overall by Portland if they don't move up. Remy Martin, not going to get drafted. Just not. He's a 5th-year senior. He's a good college player, not going to get drafted, but I think he'll probably sign on as a UDFA. Jay Cook, what lottery prospect could you see falling in the draft, maybe because of injuries, other uncertainties, etc.? Someone I could see falling in the draft further than people are expecting would probably be like Atari Eason. Although, I'd actually probably not. Probably not Atari Eason. I take that back. I mean, it's hard to kind of pinpoint one because like you're looking for the injuries, right? You're looking for some sort of medical stuff or, something. A guy that I think could fall further than a lot of people expect is probably Kennedy Chandler, just because of how big he is. A lot of people look at him as a top 20-ish prospect. I could see him falling out of the first round just because he's a little bit smaller at point guard. Des says, do you think if the Pistons get the 7th pick, they'll use it and grant a trade up? Possibly, they'll try to, but the issue here is you have to have both sides agree, right? Like, if you're another team, like, think about it from someone else's perspective, and it's very, very unlikely the Pistons get the 7th pick, by the way. But, like, let's say they're even at 5. If you're a team that's picking 2nd overall, would you trade pick 2 for 5 and Jeremy Grant? Like, in all reality, in this draft, would you actually want to do that? For me, I probably wouldn't. But I understand why some teams, like say Portland moves up, maybe Portland would do that. Portland would probably love to do that. But maybe, other teams like Oklahoma City, Orlando, like Jeremy Grant doesn't do anything for you. So it kind of depends on the situation. Sei says, should the Bulls draft EJ Liddell or Mark Williams? Either one. If either of them are available, that's just the right pick, in my opinion. Ivan says, what are some of the old draft prospects you are dead wrong about? Trae Young. Trae Young is the player I was the most wrong about ever. I was terribly, terribly wrong about Trae Young. I thought he was going to be too small and too ball dominant as a player to work in the NBA. And I think the biggest reason why I really underrated his pick and roll passing. I think I looked at him and thought he's going to turn over the basketball way too much. He's going to struggle with NBA length and size. And all he's done is get better each year. And I was dead wrong about him. So that's the player I was the most wrong about. I thought he was not going to be that good. I thought he was going to be a decent player in the NBA. But I didn't think he was going to be a star. And he's a star. So I think he's the player I was probably the most wrong about ever. And I think if you're looking for other players I was wrong about, I mean, there's always some, right? You're always going to be wrong about a few guys. Let me try and think here off the top of my head. Let me go back and look here, because I do try and keep track of some of this in my head, but like the Trae Young one's the obvious one for me, that like I was dead wrong about. I talked about Franz Wagner already. I was wrong about. There's gonna be times you miss. Ivan, I'm gonna think about this a little bit more. It's hard to just pull them all out of the top of my head right now. Specifically while I'm dealing with my cold. But Joe wants to know if Wiseman's getting moved. I don't think so. I don't think the Warriors should feel any pressure to move him. For Remy Martin, we talked about him already. I don't think he's gonna get drafted. Josh wants to know, what % chance do the Thunder have at a top 4 pick, considering in the Clippers selection? So here we are. Let's pull this up on stream now. And considering we are just about 5 hours away from the draft lottery, Oklahoma City, top 4% chance of 48% with their own pick. And with the Clippers pick, they have a 7.1% chance. So overarchingly, they have a 55% chance to have a top 4 pick, which isn't phenomenal odds. It's just a little bit better than a coin flip. And to have both of them in the top 4, again, pretty low odds. That's about a 3.5% chance, if I'm doing my math right on that, to have both of them in the top 4. So again, not very likely, but overall, pretty decent odds to have a top 4 selection. But more than likely, I think that that pick 12 is going to stay at 12 probably. Chase says, who do you think the Pacers will draft? I talked about that a little bit. I think that if they stay at 5, I think they'll consider Keegan Murray. I think they'll look at, Jaden Ivey or Shaedon Sharpe if they're there. Otherwise, I think they'll, look at a guy like Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona. And who knows, maybe Jalen Duren, if they love him. I wouldn't be ruling that out. Do you think Armando Bacot could be possibly drafted next year? I don't think he'll get drafted in the first round. I think he'll be a second round selection next draft. Of course, I was pretty surprised he pulled his name out of the draft this year and didn't explore it a little bit more, because for him, I think he was probably at the peak of his value just with how he played in the tourney. Sherwin says, what do you think about Jaden Ivey? I see Dennis Smith Jr. I will not pick him in the lottery. That's very interesting that you see that. I don't see that at all. I see John Morant. I think this kid is going to be phenomenal. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be the best player in this draft class. I have a scouting profile of him up on the channel, so after this live stream, go check that out, because I really recommend you watch that. It talks about all the great things that he does and how Purdue wasn't even a great fit for him. Just based on the other players around him, I think they could have had a better situation where he shined even more. So for me, I think that Ivey's going to be a really special player. Maybe he's the guy I'm wrong about, though. You never know. I'm always wrong about someone in every draft. Like everyone is. Everyone has their moments. But overarchingly, I think I do a pretty good job. Nola versus the World says, should the Pelicans try to trade back and get off Devontae Graham contract? Maybe, if they have a good option for that. We saw them do that last year with the Eric Bledsoe deal, so I wouldn't rule it out. That front office there with David Griffin making some of those decisions has done that in the past. Eric Williams says, who do you think the Pistons should look at getting in the draft? I do have a Pistons offseason preview, but specifically for Detroit, I do think that they would really, really do well looking at Jaden Ivey or Jabari Smith or Holmgren. I mean, if they stay in the top 3, you're going to have one of those 3 guys available to you, and I think they could hit a home run with any of those picks. Avery says, what teams do you think are most likely to trade up or down in this draft? I think Portland's one of the teams really likely to make a move. I think that also Oklahoma City would love to, but it takes 2 to tango. So we'll see if they're able to get a deal done there. AJ Griffin is not going to play the 2 in the NBA. He is not skilled enough offensively. He will play the 3 or 4. I just don't see that. Interesting here. Frankie says, I could see the Rockets trade Woods and the 17th pick to move up in the draft. I know Charlotte's name keeps getting brought up into that. I don't know if I see that happening, but we'll see. Sherwin saying Jaden Ivey will fall. Interesting. We'll see. We'll see where he goes. AJ Griffin falling and Ivey the most likely due to need. Interesting thoughts there. Key King says, do you see the Kings trading their pick if they don't land a top 4 pick? Very possible as well. It depends on what offers are out there for them. But I think they're going to consider some of those options trying to win with Fox and Sabonis. What do I think about Ty Ty? I think he's a solid guard. He probably fits best as a backup point guard in today's league, but there's definitely a role for him in the NBA. Mamadou says Griffin could fall. His medicals are bad. That's a good point about his medicals. But at the same time, like based on talent, I don't see him going outside the lottery. Joe says Pacers fan, but I want to see the Kings make playoffs for team and Sabonis. Definitely good to be cheering on some other teams, especially when they're in the opposite conference. Love that, Joe. Jay Cook says, on the other hand, who do you think could rise in the draft that may surprise people like last year's Josh Giddey pick or when the Spurs drafted Primo? I think Hugo Bassan. I've been saying his name for a long time, and I think he's way better than everyone else on YouTube is talking about, and even some draft analysts. He's a very talented guard. If you guys haven't watched film on him, you need to. He can handle the basketball. He can knock down shots on the move. He can play make for others, and he can get to the basket and finish. He is a very complete offensive player, and now he's one of the worst defensive players in this draft. But the nice thing about that is I think it's all technique. He does not shuffle his feet well. He actually does not glide at all. His slides are terrible. It looks like he's never been taught how to play defense. And I myself am a basketball coach. And when I look at that, I say that is fixable. That is something you can teach, coach up, and change, but you can't change talent. You can't change offensive creativity, and you can't change great shooting. You just can't. You can't teach someone to be a great shooter, and I think Hugo Bassan's a great shooter. So I think ultimately, they're gonna be able to find, if some team drafts him in the first round, I think it'll be shocking to other people. But for me, I've been mocking him in the first round all year. Here, Batalio wants to know, do the Rockets trade out at pick 4 if they get it, since they don't have a need for a guard? No, I don't think they trade out of the top 4 because there's a lot of forwards. Jabari Smith, Paulo Banchero, Chet Holmgren is a front court player as well. I mean, that's I don't think they would trade out of the top 4. Crow says, how good do you think Patrick Baldwin Jr. is? I don't think he's good at all. For me, he fits a role in the NBA. He's going to be a 4 who can shoot the 3 ball. And, that's valuable for sure. But for me, I just don't really love that. I just don't think that's something that really is what you want, especially in a first-round player. I think that he's a second-round type of pick. Name here says, do you think OKC could draft Duren? I think he could fit their roster. He definitely does, and he kind of fits the profile of what Sam Presti would maybe draft as an athletic big who maybe has extremely high upside. The one thing here for OKC, though, is if they're top 4, they're going to take one of the bigger dogs, and then they're going to, maybe try and move back up for Duren. I could see that as a potential option. Flecko wants to know what my thoughts were on Peyton Pritchard going into the league. So I thought Peyton Pritchard was going to really struggle defensively. And to my point, I think he does. I think the only issue, though, with what my draft take was is, I didn't have him getting drafted by the Celtics because I didn't know that. And Boston historically has done a great job since Brad Stevens was hired there as the coach. Now he's obviously the president with Ime Udoka, following a very similar defensive system and scheme. They do a great job of defending as a team, and it's hidden some of Pritchard's deficiencies. He was a phenomenal ball handler coming out, someone with a pretty decent offensive game. I thought he was going to be a pretty good second-round pickup. But, I think, some of his issues that he had specifically on the defensive end of the floor with his size have really been hidden by Ime Udoka, Brad Stevens, and the Boston Celtics. And that's a testament to good coaching, good decision-making, good schematic changes that fits your roster. And I think Boston deserves a ton of credit. That's why they're in the conference finals. They are very, very smart. Cash Out Isaiah says, hot take, I believe Shane Sharp is the best fit player that the Magic could draft. That definitely is a hot take. But he's a good player for sure. So Rise Above says Shane Sharp versus Ivy. I know you're an Ivy guy, but Sharp's size and potential seems tantalizing. It is. It really is. But there's also a bigger risk here because we've seen all of these other players essentially at the collegiate level, whereas we have not seen Shane Sharp at the college level. And I'm not saying that's, a death sentence for his prospect evaluation. Cade Cunningham, when I watched him at Montverde, the first time I saw him, I thought this guy's the first overall pick. He is so phenomenal. And of course, he ended up being the first overall pick. I never wavered from that. Even when Jalen Green was playing great, I never wavered from that. And Shane Sharp is phenomenal as well. But let's look back at a BJ Boston, who everyone thought was going to be a top 5 pick, ended up having some struggles. His 1 year in college ended up going in the second round. Now, I'm not saying Shane Sharp would follow that same career path, but there's a little bit more of a risk here. Think about this. Kobe Bryant got drafted 13th overall because he came out of high school. Kevin Garnett was not a top 3 pick when he came out of high school. A lot of these overseas players are not top 5 picks because they're coming from overseas. Think about Luka Doncic won EuroLeague MVP, was the best player in the EuroLeague at 18 years old, and was not the first overall pick in the NBA draft because teams have concerns about what's not right in front of them at the highest level playable, which is college or, G League Ignite as well. So I think that there is going to be a little bit of a negative perspective on Sharp a little bit. Now, I think Sharp's going to be an awesome player. I don't want to say that I think Sharp's going to be really, really good. But there is a risk here, and you have to look at it from the lens of the GM that drafts him is signing up to not only give this kid millions of dollars, but he's also putting his job on the line here a little bit. If you do draft him above a Banchero, you draft him above a Jabari Smith, or some of the other guys that are consistently preferred by evaluators and analysts, it does raise some eyebrows, specifically if the pick does not work out. Evan says, what team's future is looking bad as far as current roster and draft capital versus best future? For me, the team right now that I think is really shaky down the road, there's a few. I don't love what the Knicks have on their roster, and Knicks fans, I'm sorry about that. But I just was not a fan of Julius Randle. I thought he was not worth that extension. And like RJ Barrett's really good. They have some draft assets. They have the Mavs, but I just think that they're like going to be stuck in that middle ground where they're not good enough to consistently make the playoffs and then make a run, but they're also not bad enough to get the first overall pick without some luck. Summer Lowe wants to know, do you think Scottie Barnes is good? Yes. Last year I had him 4th on my big board. I had him above Jalen Suggs, notably. I was one of the few people to actually have that because Suggs was busy lighting up college game. For Gonzaga, of course, had some crazy performances, and we know how that all played out. But ultimately, I just looked at Barnes' profile. I thought what Barnes could be defensively special. Barnes is a pretty good offensive playmaker. I preferred Barnes over Suggs. I ended up being so right about that. And I'm really glad because I caught a lot of flack for it last year, but, hindsight's always 20/20. Mamadou Diallo wants to see a tankathon spin. All right, we are going to get a tankathon spin on here for Mamadou. So let's go ahead here and hit it. I want you guys to comment real quick. Who do you think is going to be the first overall pick? And let's go ahead and sim the lottery here in 3, 2, and 1. We are simulating. And Washington, oh my goodness, the Washington Wizards move up. The New Orleans Pelicans moved up. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is crazy, crazy turn of events here. The Wizards jump up to number 1. Orlando goes to number 2. And the New Orleans Pelicans with the Lakers pick ends up moving up to 3, with the Indiana Pacers jumping up into the top 4, which means only 3 of the 4 teams that were in the top 4 projected ended up moving down in Houston, Detroit, and Oklahoma City. This is what you call a nightmare situation here in the lottery, where a bunch of bad teams move down and teams that are pretty solid move up. If Washington gets the first overall pick, and they already have, at this point, they already have Beal and Kristaps and Kuzma and Hachimura and Avdia and Kispert, that's a pretty intriguing team. That could be pretty insane. Jaden Ivey is 6'4", by the way. Truth. So don't worry about the other comment you saw. That person clearly does not like Jaden Ivey too much. Probably is a fan of another Big Ten team or something. .40 says, who do the Pistons select if they land the number 1 pick? Pistons probably would take either Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren, I would guess. Brian Singleton, what projected late second round picks, UDFAs, are you high on? So there's a few guys that could be in that realm. I think Trace Jackson-Davis is pretty good. If he goes undrafted or is a late second round pick, I think that's a massive steal. You could also look at a guy like Julian Strawther, who is maybe a little bit lower. I think he could be a pretty good pickup for a team. And then also Hyunjung Lee from Davidson. He's a really nice three-point shooter, does a lot of his shooting off the move, which I really like to evaluate as a talent evaluator, because you look at You look at drafting someone like Hyunjung Lee in the second round, that's going to be a pretty good pickup because you can use him in offensive sets to get buckets when you really need them. So that's for me what I kind of think. Koloko could be an interesting pickup too if he goes that late. Sherwin Sharp is incredible. I think Sherwin, the issue here. I keep seeing your comments, and to me it seems like you are just so combative against Jaden Ivey because you like Shaedon Sharp. Newsflash, both of them can be really good. Like, they don't have to be enemies or against. It's like the Luka Doncic Trae Young thing. And I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. So I love Luka Doncic. I'm glad the Mavericks traded for him on draft night. Don't get me wrong. But everyone since then has made Trae Young and Luka enemies, and there's no reason for that. Both of them are great. Both of them are very good players. You can have your opinion on who won that trade. You can have your opinion on who's better, but it doesn't take away from the other one. Me saying Luka Doncic is great does not take away from Trae Young, and me saying Trae Young is great does not take away from Luka. And I'm telling you right now, I think Jaden Ivey's great. I think Shaedon Sharp's going to be great. It doesn't take away from either of them. BX Mel says, as usual, the Knicks will get the short end of the stick. As you can see here, Knicks stay at 11, which is unfortunate for them for sure. OBJ says, hoping my Wizards finally get lottery luck. We need it bad. Definitely heartbreaking if they don't, especially after seeing this lottery sim. Interesting here. Aiken says, I would take Boncaro first. Very interesting. Moreno, Jabari Smith to the Kings definitely would be really, really good. Here we have excitement from OBJ saying, yes, let's go for Washington. Definitely a little bit of excitement here from Brian as well. Real quickly, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put the live stream into subscriber only mode for the comments. So if you want to keep commenting, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button right now. I'm not setting a minimum subscribe time, so you just have to subscribe. That's all you have to do to comment. And that's just a quick update here because I do want you guys to all hit that subscribe button to keep up with more future NBA content. Abdominal says NBA rigged if this happens. Definitely an interesting opinion there. Robezel says Tankathon hates the Rockets. It really does. I've simulated 3 lotteries this year. I've only done them 3 times. This one for the live stream and then 2 videos. I've done that, one for a mock draft and then one for the video that came out on the channel today. And Houston has fallen down to 5 each time. So I honestly think that you're right here, Robezel. Tankathon really does hate the Houston Rockets. Envision says, LOL, Tankers lost in that lottery. Yes, they did. Houston, Detroit, Oklahoma City all take massive stumbles. Brian said there would be hearings if that situation happens. Yes, there would be. Definitely would not be great. Chaluminati says Jaden Ivey will be a Piston. I'm calling it now. If that's the case, Chaluminati, I think we're all going to be questioning if you are actually a part of the Illuminati. Of course, here were my predictions. If you want to see them again, they will be going on the bottom here now. My prediction: first overall, Houston Rockets; second overall, Sacramento Kings; third, Detroit Pistons; fourth, San Antonio Spurs. Brian says, what is your video schedule looking like post lottery tonight? So tonight, after the lottery, I'm probably going to post a reaction. I'm going to live stream now for the lottery. That was decided today during this live stream. So shout out to you guys for that. And then tomorrow morning, this is a little bit of insider information. Okay, keep it on the down low. Insider information here. NBA mock draft coming out tomorrow morning. That is the plan as of right now for after the lottery, because I want you guys to have a fresh, brand new mock draft with the brand new order. I'm really excited about it. There's going to be a lot of work that goes into it tonight on who I think gets drafted where. Comment your predictions for the top 4. I want to know exactly who you think gets drafted in the top 4. And I want to know who you think picks top 4. Give me your thoughts. Brady Thompson, welcome to the stream, says, what's your opinion on Sharif O'Neal? I posted pretty good vertical yesterday. And obviously, as Shaquille O'Neal's son, he's going to draw some attention. There's just a lot of medical concerns. He's missed so much time during college that I think there's some serious questions about what his future is like in the NBA. I think he's going to probably go undrafted just because of that, unfortunately. Norin says, who is the most underrated, overrated prospect in this draft? That's a great question. For me, the most overrated is Ochai Agbaji. I think, yes, he won a national championship. Yes, he was a really good college player. And I think he's going to be good in the NBA. Don't get me wrong. But I think people are looking at him like he's going to be a very good NBA player. I think he's going to be like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, where he plays a role and ends up having a nice career. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think he's going to be a star. And I think then if you look at one of the most underrated, I keep going back to Ron Harper Jr. I think this kid needs to be a first-round pick. I really believe in Ron Harper Jr. I think that kid is going to be phenomenal. I think Jaden Hardy would also be one of the most underrated prospects because everyone's just falling asleep on a kid who has really great shot creation potential. Worst case, he ends up being a really good sixth man. But best case, he maybe becomes a low-end star in this league, which is very valuable. And I also think another guy that people are sleeping on a little bit, Jalen Duren. It's fun being a YouTuber because you get to see a lot of other people's opinions in the comments section, which is one of my favorite things. Some of the comments I read are not super pleasant, but some of them that are, you see like people saying that they don't think Jalen Duren has a good skill set. And I think Duren has a really good skill set specifically for what teams are going to ask him to do. So it's interesting seeing all that stuff, but that's my opinion. Chris Young says, man, if the Kings get Paolo or Jabari, they would be set long-term. Yes, they would be. Chaluminati says, Ron Harper Jr. I didn't even know his boy was balling. That's awesome. Yeah, he was really, really good for Rutgers the past few seasons, Chaluminati. And I think that, he's going to be a nice player in the league for sure. I think he's going to be awesome. Brian says, I really like Duren and Mathurin for the Pels. Do you see a situation where he isn't there for the Pels at 8? Yes, I do. Let's go ahead and sim the lottery, or let's just reset the lottery here. Let's just say here now, like Houston would maybe take Jabari Smith. Orlando maybe takes Banchero. Detroit, let's say they get Ivy. For Oklahoma City takes Holmgren. Not that this order is perfect or anything. I'm just saying those 4 players are off the board. Indiana, maybe they fall in love with Sharp. Maybe Portland goes with, Mathurin or Duren. I could see them taking Duren, to be honest. And then Sacramento say they take Mathurin. They're both of those guys are off the board for New Orleans. So that's kind of the idea there. There is a potential way that those guys aren't there. But then at that point, you'd have like Keegan Murray available to you, which is pretty good. And it's not like that's a guarantee that happens that way. I'm just saying it's possible, I guess. Troy says, I agree. Ron Harper Jr. is underrated and deserves to be drafted first round. Anyone who's actually watched him, yes, I know his upside's not elite, but he's a very, very good player. We have a question here about Miami taking a chance on Leonard Miller since they don't really have needs and have a good development staff. Leonard Miller better not come out for the NBA draft. Actually, I know he's in the early entrant portion right now, but he still has his college eligibility. He needs to go to college. That kid is not ready for the NBA. I have a scouting profile up on him. If you guys want a good laugh, go watch some of the clips in there. He is not ready for the NBA. I'm telling you right now, Miami, that would be a waste of a pick, especially if they use the first round pick on him. That's just no. They can't do that. David, if the Spurs land in the top, we can say goodbye to playing tournament, which would make me happy. Yes, you definitely could. And remember, here were my predictions. Rockets, Kings, Pistons, Spurs. So we'll see if I'm exactly right. I don't think AJ Griffin will be a superstar. Fourth coverage, that's an interesting take there. I see why some people really like him, but definitely interesting. Zach Z, San Antonio Spurs says, just joining. Sorry if you've already discussed, but if the Spurs get 4th, who do you see them taking? No worries. Glad to have you in here. Hopefully you guys are enjoying. Make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. Would definitely really appreciate all the love and support. And then for the Spurs, if they get 4th, let's say, hypothetically, Jabari's off the board, Holmgren's off the board. And then we go into 3, it depends on who gets drafted 3rd. But I think if San Antonio gets 4, we could see them take, a Shaedon Sharpe or an Ivy if that's the best player there. I know that doesn't necessarily fit. They have Primo, they have DeJounte Murray. But why would the Spurs not go best player available, right? Is it worth taking Keegan Murray over those 2 guys? Is it worth that? For me, I don't really think so. But maybe they would look at a Keegan Murray, who I think Keegan Murray would be great. Paulo Banchero, if he's still there, obviously that makes a lot of sense too. But it's possible we see Smith, Holmgren, Banchero go 1 through 3, and then they get stuck with the Ivy, Sharpe, do we have to take a guard? Do we trade down? Is it worth trading down? Is that actually a smart decision? For me, I would just go best player available, but I could see a bunch of different options here. Spurs and Paulo definitely fit great. And yes, Hyunjin Lee definitely is a skilled player. In terms of his shooting, he's able to put the ball on the deck a little bit. It's not like he's going to, absolutely change your franchise, but I think he's a good fit offensively. Griffin fits H-Town really well. They need pieces that complement Green. Definitely agree with that. And then we have a question or a request here. We'll get to that in just a second, Warriors Travel Coaster. But Wes Nimbus, welcome to the stream, says, who do you see the Magic taking? I know everyone wants us to get Jabari, but honestly, I don't know if I want a 3-and-D with no shot creation. That's a great point. The one thing here about Jabari, and I know why, shot creation is vitally important. Jabari's a very good, tough shot maker. So even though he doesn't create a lot of space, he doesn't need to. There is so many examples of him knocking down really contested shots that down the road, he may become a phenomenal shot creator even without separation. So that is something to keep in mind. But I think Paulo Banchero is probably the actual best fit for you guys. And now let's go back here. Mel wants to know who the first European player drafted is. I think it's going to be Ousmane Dieng. He's not European. He's coming from New Zealand with the New Zealand Breakers. But if you mean overseas player, that's what I'm thinking. Warriors Travel Coaster says do a sim against. Let's go ahead, go back here. We got this reset, and we're gonna simulate in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Detroit gets the first overall pick, and Portland Trailblazers fans get to rejoice. Houston moves down again, but for the first time ever, I don't see them at 5. I get to see them picking 3rd. Indiana 4th. Orlando, worst case scenario, falls to 5, or almost worst case scenario, and Oklahoma City moves down to 6, where they picked last year. They drafted Josh Giddey. So definitely interesting shakeup there. Give me your thoughts on that draft order. Detroit picking 1st overall again definitely is a realistic outcome. And let me know, are you guys enjoying the live stream so far? I really hope you are. I'm going to go ahead and check how many likes we have. So smash that like button right now. Let me know what your thoughts are on the content today. Again, I really hope you guys are enjoying everything that we've been posting on the channel. I've been putting a lot of work in. So again, I hope you are really, really enjoying. I'm going to take a quick drink here too, because my throat is starting to dry up a little bit. Great. We are back now. Give me your thoughts. I've been definitely excited. Big time Blazers fan, it seems like. Brett HD, glad to have you in here. He says, who do you think the best player will be out of this draft class in the next couple of years? I think Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be the best player in the class, specifically because you look at where the NBA is at. And does a Chet Holmgren, who is a really good connecting offensive piece and a great defensive player, is that typically what you look at as the best player on a team, on a championship type of team? Or do you look at, Jabari Smith, who doesn't create a lot of on-dribble separation, but has a lot of upside as a shooter and defensive player? Do you look at that as the best player on a team? Or do you look at the ball handler who can get to the rim whenever he wants to, has really improved as a three-point shooter, has really good range on his three-point shot? That's usually the player we look at as the best player on a championship team, is a Jaden Ivey type. And I'm telling you right now, I think Jaden Ivey, you put him into an NBA system with more space, more shooting around him, watch out. He's showing some really good feel as a playmaker. It's just about getting the right pieces around him that open the floor up for him to do that more consistently. I think he's going to be really good. I see Jaden Ivey as a point guard, not a shooting guard. And I think that's really what makes the biggest difference here for me. Bryant says, thoughts on who the Hawks should draft? Schlenk has been known for dribble, pass, shoot type of players. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people that came from San Antonio at some point, they tend to have that type of that lineage to them. The thing for me here with Atlanta is you have to look for a backup guard, whether that's like a Dyson Daniels or just more defense, which I know that doesn't necessarily hit your dribble, pass, shoot, but you have to look at some of the flaws on this current team and add to them. And for me, defense is how you add to it. You just have to get better on that end of the floor. Fourth coverage here says, I guess Paulo is dropping due to versatility. I don't see him in too many roles other than a ball handling forward. That's when he was at his best at Duke. He was definitely at his best at Duke when he had the ball in his hands. The thing here about versatility is, he's going to not guard fives probably. He's not going to guard threes. He's going to be a four who defends fours. And at the same time here, he is a really good offensive player. I think there's just concerns that that's all he is someone who can put the ball in the hole, but isn't going to do a whole lot else for your team. Whereas Jabari Smith has unique two-way potential. Chet Holmgren, unique two-way potential. Jaden Ivey might become the best guard from this class, and that's definitely valuable in its own right. I think Ivey's going to struggle defensively, but, we've seen that in years past. John Morant's not a good defensive player right now in the NBA. And if you can put defensive players around him, it works pretty well. So that's kind of my thought here. Ezra says, who's the best fit for Detroit if they get number one? Best fit? I think Chet would be really good there. I really do. But I think Ivy and Jabari as well. I mean, that's the thing about this year's class. This year's class is so hard to determine who's going to go one, especially when we don't know the picks yet, because all of them are good at the top. I mean, Banchero, having him fourth, he's fourth on my big board, and I feel terribly sick about that because he's a very good player. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have Banchero all the way down at 4. But then I watch the other 3 again. I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, I can't have Banchero above these guys. I think these guys are going to be awesome. And that's kind of the issue I'm at right now. So Detroit, they're in a really good position all around. Brian says, killing it, bro. I'm a new follower, but I've really enjoyed all your content. Everyone give this guy a follow. Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, thank you for saying that. In the description of this video, I actually do have my own personal Instagram link in there. So if you guys do want to go follow my own personal, very rarely do I ever put this in. I believe only two times in the last 3-4 months I've actually put my own personal Instagram link in the bio. So if you do want to go give me a follow on my personal Instagram, go ahead and do that. I will be accepting all follow requests within the next 2-3 days. So give me a follow on there, and let's keep going with the NBA content. Brian, I really do appreciate the the kind comments. I'm going to go ahead and look at the like count. How many likes do we have on here? 96. We're at 96 likes. So go ahead, smash that like button right now. That would really, really help me. It lets me know I'm doing a pretty good job on the channel here. So again, I really hope you guys are enjoying the content. It's been so much fun to record content lately with how much energy you've all been bringing. So again, huge shout out to you guys. Escobar says, with the first pick in the 2020 NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons select Jabari Smith. So he gives his own opinion there. Wes Nimbus wants to know, do you only do prospect analysis or do you speak on the NBA in general? I do speak on the NBA in general. Actually, just yesterday, on Monday, May 16th, I posted my playoff predictions. So for the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals, that's in there. So make sure to go check that out. Norin Rad says, if you're a Lakers GM, would you try to draft a player in the second round? Who would you trade for a second round pick? And who would you target to draft? Well, if I was the Lakers GM, I would first lament and probably try and resign because if I was Rob Pelinka, I would look at myself in the mirror every morning and say, wow, I took a historic franchise and that had LeBron James and Anthony Davis and completely ran it into the ground. But then secondly, after I did that every single morning with honesty hour in the bathroom mirror, I would probably try to trade back up into the second round. And I would try and trade, probably cash. That's probably the best thing they have, and future second round picks trying to move up. And I would look at a few different players, maybe a Jamarian Sharp out of Western Kentucky, who's a really, really big player. He stands about 7'5" and is actually fairly mobile. So give you a little bit more rim protection. I think he'd be a fun little sneaky pickup. Not like he's going to be a huge minutes player, but I think he could have a role. I would look at a Hyun Jung Lee out of Davidson, who can shoot the 3-ball well off the move, has decent size to him as well. Maybe a Christian Brown from Kansas, who's just one of those players I think is going to come into the NBA and play hard and play well. You could look at, some other guys like a Jalen Williams out of Arkansas, who is a big who shoots the 3-ball pretty decently and is a pretty solid playmaker. Maybe, a guy like Harrison Ingram or Christian Koloko could make some sense. There's definite options here for the Lakers. They can get back to being good. It's just going to take perfect execution, which I just don't trust Rob Pelinka on. Adrian Moreno wants to know who my favorite team is and who do you want them to pick. I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. Really, really diehard. I've been a Mavericks fan since I was 4 years old. Not born and raised in Dallas, not even born and raised in Texas. That's just the team I clung on to when I was really young. And I'm really happy, obviously, because Luka Doncic was my favorite player coming out of the 2018 draft class. I thought it was shocking to me that the Suns didn't take him after hiring one of his former coaches, Igor. So I was shocked that he was still there for the Mavs to trade up to get. I was shocked that the Kings didn't take him. And obviously that's something that didn't work out too well for them. Luka was number one on my board that year. I thought it was crazy that he didn't go first overall, even though I thought Ayton was going to be better than he has been, specifically as an individual offensively. But for me, Luka was the number one guy. And this year I want them to take Ron Harper Jr. if he's available at that spot. Otherwise, I wouldn't be mad about like a Blake Wesley or some of the other, guards, because I do have a little bit of concern about Jalen Brunson hitting free agency. I'm a little worried. So we'll see. Reggie Williams here says Pacers will have the number one pick, and now's a good time to reset our draft lottery. We're going to go ahead and simulate it again here in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Simulate lottery. And the Kings and Spurs move up. This is essentially what I predicted here. These four teams, not Oklahoma City, actually, excuse me. I had the Pistons staying in the top 4. So not exactly the order I predicted here, but fairly close. You see the top 4% chance here for Sacramento, 32%. Pretty decent odds here as well for San Antonio, 20% chance they end up in the top 4. And the interesting thing here is you guys might be wondering, well, if you add all these percentages up, it's over 100%. So what's going on with that? That is, of course, because there's 4 teams with 100% chances to be top 4. So there's 400% that you need to add up for. Hopefully that makes sense what I just said. Maybe it didn't come out as clear as I would hope. David Crawford says, let's go Spurs. Also, if Spurs get a top 3 pick, Pop will do another 2 years and get the team ready for Jay Wright. Thoughts? Interesting. So Jay Wright, that's your prediction. I don't think Jay Wright will become the coach. But that's not a terrible take. It's a pretty interesting idea. So I don't hate that by any means. Let's go over here to the neutralizer. What are the basis of your predictions? And do you think the Spurs trade up? And is that a good idea? So the basis on my predictions, there's a loose basis. I made a video and I joked a lot in it, and some people didn't like the way I joked, but I was basically implying that in Adam Silver's NBA, small market teams are going to get boosted up. So for me, those two small market teams were Sacramento and San Antonio. And I think both of them, even though San Antonio doesn't have a small market in terms of like their fandom, they've got a lot of fans. But what I'm telling you right now is like, San Antonio is not the biggest city. They're not the biggest brand despite being one of the best teams. San Antonio has a really passionate fan base. So does Detroit. So does Houston. I think that those 3 teams are probably going to be in the top 4 just because I think San Antonio could use a boost. And I think Sacramento really needs a boost. And I think the NBA is going to look at themselves similarly to how they did it with New Orleans and Memphis. And now, yes, I am kind of implying that the draft lottery is rigged and fixed a little. But it seems like in Adam Silver's NBA, the small market teams do fairly well in the lottery. So that's kind of the basis on my predictions. And we have a follow-up question here from Brett. What should the OKC Thunder do if they get number 1? I think Chet Holmgren, but also, again, Paulo or Jabari fits better in my opinion. I think they would probably take either Jabari or Chet. Again, it's very tough to distinguish between those two because I think teams could really look at themselves either way and say, these are our top 2 guys, and we're fine with either. So, Abdominal wants me to elaborate on my Dyson Daniels take from before. Okay, so this is another good question here. So I kind of look at him as a Frank Ntilikina, and part of the issue here is he just doesn't shoot the 3-ball well. I don't really trust his mechanics on his 3-point shot. And I think a big issue that people aren't talking about, his ball handling is just not that great, specifically as a space creator or as someone who can, blow by guys consistently. In fact, a lot of Dyson Daniels' success in the G League level as a scorer came with his back to the basket, which sure, that's a cool skill to have. And yes, it did make players like Darren Williams really good back in the day, and Jason Kidd when he would play out of the post. But the thing about the Kids and Darren Williams of the world, those guys had elite handles and they could shoot the basketball a little bit. That's where Jason Kidd improved so much throughout his career. Early in his career, he couldn't. But remember, Jason Kidd came into the league in the 90s, not in 2022, where three-point shooting is the cream of the crop in terms of skill set around stars. Everything's about spacing, and I think Dyson Daniels, a lot of people love to give flack to Ben Simmons about not shooting, and they love to give flack to Russell Westbrook about not being able to shoot. Dyson Daniels shot about 25% from three for the G League Ignite team. So, if you're drafting him 8th overall, the idea here is that he's going to improve, right? And so far, I mean, yes, he's gotten better since he was 16, 17, but at the point now where you're drafting him, I don't think he's going to be a good three-point shooter until he's at least 23, probably, and that's if you have a good shooting coach. That's a risk. It's a massive risk to take, and I just don't think it's worth, really taking. Joe says, I like Ivy, but not for Pacers with Halliburton need forwards. Definitely understand the decision there. Ashley wants to know who's on my big board. Well, everyone's on my big board. I've ranked pretty much every single prospect. Most of the time I only share my top 30 because otherwise it'd be like a 5-hour long video, which would just be insane. So, but in my top 30, I do have that on the channel. So make sure to go check that out. I think that video came out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Truth Over Emotion says, Paulo's like a poor man's Chris Webber. He may be AD with no visible passion. I don't see the AD comparison for him. I just don't think defensively he's going to have that impact. But offensively, I think I keep comparing him to a blend between Tobias Harris and a New York Knicks Carmelo Anthony, which I know there's a pretty wide gap there between those two guys. But I think the skill set and play style really fits, right? Or he's going to, be able to score in the mid-range. He's got a pretty good pull-up jump shot. He can handle the basketball a little bit. Really good in the mid-post. Really nice jab step combination with a rise-up. He's a good player. I just don't know if his upside is going to be as immense as a guy like Holmgren or Smith or even Ivy. Eric says, who should the Knicks draft? There's a lot of options. I do have a Knicks offseason preview on the channel, so I recommend going to check that one out. Ro Bezel wants to know your player comp for Kennedy Chandler. I've heard everything from Mario Chalmers, which that's interesting. I would not say that. To Bledsoe to Kenny Anderson. And the Anderson one's not bad. I mean, I kind of like a Patrick Beverley comparison. I don't think he's going to be, as crazy, and I think he's a little bit better offensively. But in terms of the physical profile, the two players are fairly similar. Chandler's a little bit quicker than Beverley, but at this point, remember, Beverley's 33 years old. So that's partially why I'm kind of thinking more of Houston Rockets, Patrick Beverley, where he could do a little bit more off the dribble, get downhill a little bit more, which that was a while ago. But that's my thoughts. Ivan says, great stream, by the way. Glad you're enjoying. If you guys are, make sure to leave a like. Also, go give me a follow on Instagram. I have seen a few follows come in, so make sure to go. Definitely go give me a follow. Sorry, I was reading a quick text here as well. So Reese says, what players do you think will be great value for contenders to pick up? Again, Ron Harper Jr., Johnny Juzang, I think is a pretty good value pickup for teams. I think Dalen Terry out of Arizona is a really nice one. Don't really hear his name too often, but I think he's a pretty good option. Wendell Moore Jr. from Duke, I think, is one of the players that's just going to have a nice long career. For a projection upside, like a guy who might be there near the 20s would be Kendall Brown. I don't think he's really ready to have a huge impact right away, but I think down the road could be a pretty nice player. Jacob here says, I hope Detroit gets number one so bad. Let's go draft gods, and good luck to everyone else. I'm glad that you're wishing luck to everyone. Definitely good to maybe build up a little bit of that karma for the draft gods, saying, oh, hey, look at me. I wish so much luck on all these other teams. So why don't you reward my team now with this first overall pick? That'd be awesome. Mamadou Diallo says, just came back to see Portland number 2. See, this is what I'm talking about. Glad to see you happy, Mamadou. Tu Lee wants to know which draft class was stronger, 2021 or 2022? That's a great question. Now, 2021, the thing I'll say about 2021, the top of the draft was probably stronger than this year's simply because I don't think this year's has a Cade Cunningham, who I looked at as a player that is, really franchise pivotal. I think that Ivy's the closest thing to it, but like this draft is really, really good. 2021 I don't think was as deep. 2022 is so deep. There's so many players. There's like 35, 40 players that I think are going to have good NBA careers. And most of the time that number is closer to like 15 to 25-ish. And the fact that I see 30 to 40 is a pretty good sign. This is a really good draft class. And, every year, and this is a little pet peeve of mine I'm going to share with you guys quick. Every year we see people say, it's a 2-player draft or a 3-player draft. This year, this whole time it's been a 4-player draft. Now it's a 5-player draft with Shaedon Sharpe, this, that, and whatever. Okay. Giannis Antetokounmpo went 15th overall. Steve Nash, 15th overall. Luka Doncic went 3rd in his, Steph Curry went 7th. Okay. People say this every year, and you notice how it's usually not the draft experts, people who actually don't spend countless hours watching the draft. Yes, the first year, the top 4 guys or top 5 guys this year will probably have better impacts. But down the road, think about a guy like Jay Crowder, who was not a highly sought-after pick, went in the second round a long time ago. He has had such a phenomenal NBA career, made it to multiple NBA finals, and has been a huge role player for a bunch of teams. I'm sure no one before the draft thought Jay Crowder was going to be great, besides maybe some draft analysts and some draft evaluators. I was a little too young at that point to be really evaluating drafts, so I was not evaluating at that point. I'm only 22 years old, so I started really recently evaluating within the last 5-6 years, and even 6 is a little questionable there. Probably 5 years I've been evaluating now. Obviously, before, I was watching all the players, I just wouldn't call myself a draft evaluator. I think I've really matured and grown a lot in that area. So it's just a pet peeve of mine. I just can't say that. I think that this is a 4 or 5 player class. I just hate that. So, I think this draft class is deeper. I think maybe last year's was a little bit stronger at the top. I think both are phenomenal draft classes, though. So it's hard to say which one's better. At certain points, I've thought this one's better. At certain points, I thought last year's was better. I kind of go back and forth, which shows how good both are. Who do you think needs to hit on their pick or picks this draft the most? I think Detroit might be in this area. I think, Orlando as well. I mentioned them earlier. And the Detroit one might be surprising here to people. And the reason why I say Detroit, let's go ahead and reset this too so we can see exactly what their odds are. Third. Detroit, they're going to Cade Cunningham is awesome. I think this team is going to get better. Cade Cunningham specifically, though, is the player that's going to change this team. And this is a rare opportunity to probably put another top-end player around him. So if they can stay in the top 4 and make a huge selection and the right selection, it really does set themselves up for long-term success with 2 stars. So that's why I think Detroit has a lot of pressure on them here. Houston, I think they're still going to be bad because they're so young. But I think that Detroit, even though they're young as well, I think Cade Cunningham is just a different type of beast, and I think he's going to elevate this team, kind of like what we saw from Luka in year 2. Now, I don't think Detroit's going to be a playoff team, but I see them maybe like the 11 seed or maybe even the 10 seed next year if everything goes right. And if that does come to fruition, then you're looking at yourself and saying, ooh, this draft pick was pretty important because it might be our last time picking top 3 with Cade Cunningham on our roster. Which if they are picking top 3, it would be huge for them. Let's go down here to some other comments. Miguel says, for me, the best in the draft is Ivy so far. That's how I feel as well. Timothy says, great job, bro. Really do appreciate that. You guys have been awesome too. So I want to say great job to you. A lot of really good comments, a lot of really great questions. And you guys' analysis has been very good as well with all your opinions. Aaron, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. I know you were here so much for NBA trade deadline week. So glad to have you in here, my guy. Adrian says, John Wall to the Clippers for Brandon Boston, coffee, and a first. I'm telling you right now, you're not going to get a first-round pick for John Wall unless it's from the Lakers. And even then, I wouldn't bet on that. C. Parker C says, this guy's spin facts in regards to Detroit. Definitely. I just feel like, some Pistons fans in the past, I've ruffled some Pistons fans' feathers, but Cade Cunningham is just so good that I think this team is going to get better. Nilo, Detroit doesn't own their pick next year, right? So they need to hit to be good next year. I think that there's. Let me look up the Pistons pick real quick, because I want to make sure I get this right for you guys on stream. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to actually pull it up right now. Pistons future draft picks. Here we go. Next year, I know that their rights are gone, but there's definitely protections on it. Yeah, so it's protected top 18 next year. So like they'll probably still have that pick, but like the thing here is I don't think they'll be the third worst team in the league. I think they'll probably be like the 7th or 8th worst team in the league, which just kind of changes the results on what you're going to get in the draft. Fourth coverage says exactly, Peyton. They said it. But the NFL draft this year had 700 more players. How is there not more good players? Stars off numbers alone. Same here. AJ Griffin would lock Cade up. Wow, interesting. So thought there that AJ Griffin's going to lock up Cade Cunningham. I don't necessarily see that myself, but Aaron Roy says, I think Jalen Williams is criminally underrated out of Santa Clara. He's a big guard with pretty good playmaking skill, can get to the rim. And the one thing about him, though, he is a junior who hasn't shot the 3-ball super well in his career. So that's like one of the bigger knocks on him is he's already a little bit older at about 21 years old, which isn't old, don't get me wrong, but like at the same time, you know, someone who's older and hasn't shot the ball super great. I think maybe he had a better year this past year. Let me look up his numbers again just to make sure, because, you know, I have watched like 100 guys. So sometimes the numbers blur in my head a little bit before, like if I don't specifically prepare for a player. Yeah, actually, he shot way better this year. That's right. He shot like 39% from 3 this year. The year before, he shot 27%, which is more what I was alluding to. Yeah, you know, that's maybe I'm a little bit lower on him than I need to be once I relook at that. Joe said, didn't Stephen A call Luka a bust at draft time? We all need Mel wipers. Yeah, yes. Like Stephen A said that there was no way he would take a European player over DeAndre Ayton, which doesn't make any sense because there's been a lot of great European players, and Luka was a much better prospect than DeAndre Ayton. But Oliver, welcome to the stream. He says, I just came in, so who do you think the Rockets will take? I think for them, if they get pick 1, they'll be between Jabari and Chet, and I think they probably go with Jabari. Just resim the lottery. Portland up to number 1 this time. Oklahoma City picking 2. New Orleans jumps up to 3 again. Second time we've seen that today in this live stream. And Indiana consistently been jumping up. Pacers, I think they're badly in need to hit on this pick as well. They're another good team to talk about. Jake says, if Portland falls to pick 4 and the 3 bigs are gone to Portland, does Portland trade down and gain an additional asset, or skip over Ivy and draft someone else? I think trade down would be best case for them then. You try and move down, get another future asset, and then what you do is you probably draft Keegan Murray if you can move down from, say, 4 to like 6 or 7, back to where their pick's supposed to fall. Draft Keegan Murray at that point, maybe get an extra draft asset and then try and trade that for Jeremy Grant. Seems like a pretty good outcome to me. Dylan Rademacher says, what do you think of Keegan Murray? I'm not that high on him, but what do you think his ceiling is for a pro comparison? I think he's kind of like Harrison Barnes a little bit. Not what Harrison Barnes was in Golden State, but more so what Harrison Barnes is in Sacramento, which is a really good 4. And I think that there's a pretty good outcome there for Portland, say, if they get Keegan Murray. That would work out pretty good. Mr. Ray says the Pistons pick is protected regardless, so chances are they're going to end up keeping their pick. I agree with that, but the concern here for me is not that their pick is going to go somewhere else, but more so that their pick is going to end up not being a top 4 pick, because Cade Cunningham elevates the play of the team. They get a little bit better. They win a few more games, and then they find themselves at, like, say, pick 7 or 8, which is, you know, you can still get good players there, don't get me wrong, but it's not to the level of what you're going to get in the top 4 this year probably. Bowser says, what are the protections on Pistons pick? Top 18 protected next year. So definitely different. Man Guy says, Stephen A also said that Cade lacks the it factor. Yeah, Stephen A literally just be saying anything. I know a lot of people like him. He's definitely fun to listen to. But when it comes to actual draft evaluation and prospects and everything, you don't want to listen to him. Oladipo Show. Love that name for Oladipo, by the way. I do anything for a Halliburton-Paolo duo for the next decade. 2 of them would definitely be good. Mamadou says, how do you feel about Blake Wesley as a prospect? I think he's the ideal combo guard in terms of size and skill set. And you kind of said it there, but at the same time, think about combo guards. Combo guards tend to be guards that you don't trust enough as a playmaker, but you don't necessarily trust them as a 2 either. Combo guards are like players who don't do either well. Don't do either super well. They do both decently, which there's definitely roles for that. Like look at a Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson's a combo guard, right? He's good with the ball in his hands, but isn't going to be a point guard. Blake Wesley could fit that role. He is bigger than Clarkson. He's about 6'5", fairly good athlete. The thing for me is he just doesn't read the floor well. So when you watch his highlights, he looks really great. But when you watch actual games of him, there's times like against Rutgers, he hit a huge shot in that Rutgers game to get them into the tourney, obviously when the 10 seeds played each other. But there was also a lot of moments in that game where he looked terrible, made terrible decisions, couldn't read the floor, tried inserting himself into the game too much, and it ended up not playing well. Question here about who do you see Miami taking? I think they need a backup 4 like Jalen Williams or John Butler. A backup 4, Jalen Williams would be pretty good. I don't know if he's going to go in the first round, though. For me, there's other options there that they could look at. They could look at, maybe a Wendell Moore Jr. from Duke. If someone's still there, like, say, I don't know. There's some options here. Like, you could look at maybe like an Ismail Kamagate, who could be an interesting backup big for them. I wouldn't rule that out. Jalen Williams wasn't bad. Orlando Robinson, maybe. But I think he's more of a second-round selection type as well. Jake LaRavia out of Wake Forest could fit. But again, I think he's more of a second-round type of player. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying. Probably going to stay live here for just a little bit longer. Brian says, Pels in the top 4. It's destiny. Would love to see that. For them, it would be scary, scary good how good they could become. Nyla says, how do you feel about Mathurin? I could see him becoming a legit 3-level scorer and an all-star. I think so as well. I really like Mathurin. Right now with where he sits on my big board, he's currently 7th, but it's hard having him that low. For most of the year, I had him at 5, and then Shaedon Sharpe did declare, so I had to move Mathurin down 1, which moved him to 6, and then I've come around on another player. I moved another player above him, but I still think that he's a very, very good prospect and someone who could become an all-star down the road, and at worst is a good starter in the NBA. Miguel Sanchez says, what is OKC going to do with all of their players? I think Kenrich Williams could get traded. And other than that, I think they're going to roll a lot of it forward. Hugh Doan says, do you see Houston trading down if they fall to 5? No, I don't think so. I think, the trade down idea I understand, but at the point, at 5, one of these guys is going to be available between Holmgren, Smith, Boncaro, Ivy, Sharp. One of those 5 will be there, and that's who I think the Rockets would take, is whoever one of those guys is left. Aaron here says, I think people don't realize how rare it is for teams to move picks in the lottery. Hasn't happened often historically. Right, and that this is a great point. I was actually going to say that here about this comment about trading down. You think about, this isn't the NFL. In the NFL draft, a lot of teams move down because, maybe I'm looking for a safety or a cornerback, and there's a really good edge here, but I don't need an edge. This team wants an edge. So we're going to move down. I'm going to get the best player at the position I want. Whereas the NBA, it's more so about just pure talent. It doesn't really matter what position guys play if you're getting great players. It does when you're ultimately team building and looking for final pieces and finishing touches. But if you're picking first overall, you probably just want to get the best player. Or if you're picking third overall, you probably want to get the best player. And ultimately, if you go in that regard, why would you want to move down from 3 to 7? It just doesn't make sense. Or why would you want to go from 5 to 12? If yes, maybe you get a future pick, but the idea is then I have to wait for that pick. That pick still might not be as good as 5. So that's why, trading down isn't as common as everyone seems to think. Anton Miller says Detroit may be a fringe playoff team if they draft well and steal Ayton from Phoenix. Right. This is, true. If they get Ayton, it definitely does raise their ceiling on what they could be, and it also elevates their floor quite a bit. And this is what I'm saying. Detroit has pretty good cap space this offseason. They could even look at a guy like Jalen Brunson, who's been playing awesome basketball for the Mavericks. And they could greatly improve their team, and Cade Cunningham is that dude. So that's kind of what I see. From that, let's keep going here. Not trying to skip over any comments, but there is a lot of them, which means you guys are doing awesome. Jacob says Detroit needs a top pick. Teams like the Spurs, Rockets have had it good for so long. We need our pick this year. Definitely feel that. Let's go down here. Palenka, I'll trade you, Russ, for a plane ticket out of here. That's pretty funny. That's a good comment there, Joe. Man guy friend bro says, what is Cade Cunningham's ceiling? All NBA. He could be an all NBA player. He really is that type of guy. I said that when they drafted him. I think he could still be that, which is really, really special. Aaron says, also have to mention, hope your Mavs destroy the Warriors. Thank you so much. I hope so too. Warriors fans, I get it. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy that the Warriors are back, because I have a friend who thought that they needed Kevin Durant. And I think this is really a testament to the fact that they didn't. And I think that the Warriors are an awesome franchise, awesome team. So Warriors fans, even though I'm a Mavs fan, I'm of course going to cheer for the Mavericks. I'm glad to see the Warriors are back to really where they belong, which is in the conference finals and maybe even the finals. If they beat the Mavericks, it's not the end of the world to me. I'm really happy with the season the Mavs have had. But of course, I'm diehard cheering for the Dallas Mavericks to make it to the finals. Naziah says, do you still believe in Jalen Suggs? I do. I had him 5th on my draft board last year behind Scottie Barnes, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, and Cade Cunningham. And despite what feels like a disastrous year one, don't worry. Young guards always struggle with finishing around the rim in the NBA. That was Jalen Suggs' greatest strength. He's going to improve in year 2. He's going to get much better in that regard. The game's going to slow down for him, and I think he's going to get back to a spot where we start seeing really good basketball from him. Mike says, why is Jalen Williams not talked about in the first round? When you see him play, he does little things to help the team win, charges, blocks, rebounds, specifically the charges. That's really the thing he's best at. He led the nation in charges taken this past year. Part of why you don't see him talked about in the first round a lot is the upside component here, Mike. You're just not going to see great athleticism from him. He's a pretty decent shooter, but there's other bigs in this class that probably fit the NBA style a little bit more. But I think Jalen Williams is going to be a really good pickup for whatever team gets him. If it's in round 2 or maybe in the end of round 1. Miguel Sanchez says, for me, Cunningham continues being the best player of the 2021 draft. The season 2022 will be a good one for him. I agree with pretty much everything said there. Scottie says, if the Kings don't move up via lottery, should they package Holmes, Barnes, and future picks to move up to top 3? They should try. The only issue here, again, like what we were talking about earlier, what team would take that? Like, say Detroit is there. Why would Detroit say, oh, yeah, Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes and future draft picks are what we need to put next to Cade Cunningham? No, they're going to say this top 3 pick is what we need to put next to Cade Cunningham. It's going to be really hard to move up in this class for that. Daniel says, who's the biggest name that gets traded on draft night this year? Last year, it was Westbrook. Yes, Westbrook did get traded on the day of the NFL, or on the day of the NBA draft. Buddy Hield's going to get traded, I think. And I could see Josh Hart getting traded. I think those are the players to watch for. Josh Hart's contract becomes guaranteed, I think, June 4th. His might, or not June 4th, excuse me, July 4th, but I think his might actually become guaranteed June 25th, which is 2 days after the NBA draft, which is really important when it comes to Portland's cap space management. So they might try and trade him to a team that wants to keep him. Brady wants to know who I could see the Cavs pursuing. Ochai Agbaji. I think he's probably the most sensible fit. Maybe Tari Eason, though. I could see either of those as pretty good options. Aiken says Blake is probably in the 20s. Unfortunately, those are the teams who rather have 3 and D, right? And that's exactly a good point here. Like, if you draft Blake Wesley, are you going to put the ball in his hands a ton? Probably, maybe as a 6-man down the road. That's kind of the goal. Hamid says, can you talk about the number 1 prospect of next year's draft? Big center from France, one of the best prospects I've ever seen. He's talking about Victor Wembanyama, who is a special, special talent. I'm telling you right now, he would be the first overall pick this year. If he was in this draft, he would be the first overall pick. He will be the first overall pick next year. Book it right now. I know everyone loves Scoot Henderson. I understand why. He's a good prospect. Victor Wembanyama will be the first overall pick in 2023. You can book that right now, barring anything super disastrous, some crazy catastrophic injury. Victor Wembanyama, first overall selection, 2023 NBA draft. He's special. He is really, really good. Monching Ramirez says top 10, 4 to 5 position, and on which team would suit them well. Okay, so I don't know if he's like asking for players on my big board. But like if you look at a Holmgren, Holmgren, Smith, those are two of the top 4s and 5s. You look at like a Boncaro. Any team could use those 3 guys. Those 3 guys could help a bunch of teams. Then you get maybe into the Walker Kesslers. I think the really good landing spot for him would be a team like, say, Charlotte, or maybe even, a New York Knicks could make some sense at that spot. Washington could probably use him as well. Then Mark Williams, again, probably same list of teams. Those are the top 5 there for the forwards. EJ Liddell, Houston Rockets make a lot of sense. I mean, even Charlotte could consider him. Atlanta could look at him as well. Some really good options for sure, though. Rich wants to know what I think about the Lakers situation. I think they're in purgatory right now, and I think the Russell Westbrook trade was just terrible. Not because Russ is a bad player. Russ is not a bad player. Russ just doesn't fit LeBron, Anthony Davis, and everything that LA had. They needed to go in the Buddy Hield route and then maybe try and find a way to get DeMar DeRozan. They went the wrong way, and Rob Pelinka is one of the worst GMs in all of basketball. Robert Bishop says, do you think the Pacers could trade their pick and maybe Miles Turner for a big-time star since they want to do a quick turnaround? No, I don't think so, because in the back of their head, they're going to be nervous about the big-time star wanting to leave. They'd be nervous about saying, okay, we got you here. You're with Tyrese Halliburton now. And then they pull up into Indiana. They're looking around. They're like, okay, this isn't quite Hollywood, which is, essentially what happened with Paul George. Now, obviously, he wanted to go home. But, Indiana is afraid of that a little bit. Aaron says, also, I'm fully bought in on Ousmane Dieng in the right situation with good development. He could be a star. I agree. Ousmane Dieng's a good prospect. I think he's going to be really, really good in the NBA. Mamadou Diallo says, do you think the Hornets would trade PJ Washington 13 and 15 for the 6th, Keon, and a second for a chance to get Duren? That's actually a pretty good package, and one that I think actually makes a lot of sense for both sides, Mamadou. That's a great comment there. I'm actually going to star that one to maybe come back to later, because that is a very good one. Ian says, who would you think the Kings take if they got number 1? Kings would probably take Jabari, if I had to guess. Man Guy Friend Bro says, never came across your YouTube account before, but just tossed you a sub. One of few accounts with reasonable analysis. Glad to have you be a part of Sub Gang. Love that. Make sure you guys are all subscribed, and also hit that like button for more NBA draft content moving forward. I put a lot of time and effort into these. So again, I hope you do enjoy. Ben wants to know, is Jaden Ivey going to be a decent playmaker? Yes, he will be. I know right now he only averages about like 3.5 to 4 assists a game this past year for Purdue, and some people might be saying, oh, that's a concern. Put him with more athleticism, put him around more shooting, better spacing in the NBA. Those numbers are going to go up. Joe says, got to go. See you in a few hours. Thank you. Glad you were in here this whole time, Joe. Really do appreciate you taking time to watch the stream. Have you seen tape on Will Richardson, Oregon senior? I think he's a huge sleeper. Interesting one there. I'm going to have to go revisit the tape on Will Richardson. Let me do a quick search here, because I've watched Oregon before. I'm going to have to watch him more, like, in terms of as a basketball prospect. Because throughout the college season, I watched a ton of college basketball. So, I've seen all these players. I know who Will Richardson is, but I would have to revisit to see. He averaged about 14 and 3 on 45% for the field, so not bad. But I'd have to revisit him as a draft prospect, in all honesty. Fourth Coverage wants to know if I have a player in mind for the Pelicans at 8. I think either Benedict Mathurin or probably a Jalen Duren are the two best outcomes. Salem Salem says, please let OKC get a top 3 pick. Definitely going to be some prayer circles in Oklahoma City tonight, I'm sure. Nilo wants to know, how do you feel about Easton? I think his athleticism is too unique to not go in the lotto, but his handle and shot have me concerned about his ceiling. I don't think he's worth the lottery selection, just because ultimately here with, Easton, like, the physicals are off the chart, but basketball is really a skill sport. You have to be skilled. Even Giannis Antetokounmpo, who catches a lot of flack for not being skilled and just being able to run at the rim, which to a certain degree he does, there is still quite a bit of skill there. He's a very good ball handler. He passes the ball well. He's improved as a shooter and a scorer. Like, you have to be skilled to be good in the NBA. You just have to be. And Tari Eason, it's a little bit of a red flag to me. Fourth coverage says he preaching trading down in the NBA as well. Still mad Griffin traded from pick 4 to 8. This isn't the NFL. That's exactly right. Specifically with the fact that they could have had Darius Garland at that spot. Definitely did not age well. We have a donation here. I'm going to pull this one up. $50. Wow. Thank you so much, the Gold Eagle. Really, really do appreciate it. The Suns possible DeAndre Ayton trade for a guard, maybe D'Angelo Russell, De'Aaron Fox, or even Kyrie Irving. The Kyrie Irving one's very interesting. So let's talk about this one a little bit. I know Wolves fans are actually really interested in actually acquiring DeAndre Ayton. I'm in tune with quite a few fan bases in the NBA, and I know a lot of Wolves fans have been watching for DeAndre Ayton specifically since the Suns flamed out against the Dallas Mavericks in a terrible Game 7. And D'Angelo Russell would be the name that they would probably sign and trade back to Phoenix. Now, for Phoenix, people might be saying, why would that be what makes sense? Is D'Angelo Russell really what they need on that contract? The answer to that for me is no. But the idea here, similar to how Golden State pulled in D'Angelo Russell to later move him for what became Kuminga and Wiggins, maybe Phoenix will look at this as an opportunity to remove D'Angelo Russell later, try and stay at a point where you have money to trade, and then you make a deal that fixes your roster in other ways, maybe gets you a different big down the road, or gets you a collection of role players that fit your team and really improve your depth to a certain extent. Phoenix has a lot of good players already, but I think there's definitely ways that they could still improve. Fox, I don't think that'll happen just because they have Sabonis there, but that's a good question. And then Kyrie. Kyrie's a real X factor this offseason because you never really know what's going on. I don't think Kyrie Irving is going to know what's going on until it happens, essentially. So for me, I wouldn't rule that out. Now, again, Kyrie Irving's fit into Phoenix, a little weird. This is where you maybe get into 3-team trade territory where Kyrie goes somewhere. You see Ayton going to Brooklyn, and then that somewhere wherever Kyrie goes sends something back to Phoenix. That could make some sense as well. Here we have Isaiah Coyle saying, I just want to say that I found you on my recommended and you seem like an amazing content creator already. Well, I'm really glad that you feel that way. You guys have been so awesome. Really, really do appreciate all the love and support you guys have shown throughout this time. We are really close to 11,000 subscribers. I'm actually checking right now as we speak to see exactly what we're at. But it's been insane. The amount of growth. We're actually 19 subscribers away. So let's see if we can get there right now. We need 19 subscribers to hit 10,000 or to hit 11,000, excuse me. But it's insane. In February, just 3 months ago, we were about 3 months ago, we were at about 5,000 subscribers, and now we're already up to 11,000, which is just insane. Really, really do want to share my love to you guys because you have been sharing so much love to me. Gold Ego, I'm glad I could answer your question for you. Thank you again so much for the donation. Really, really do appreciate it. Frank says Spurs will trade Pirtle. Definitely a possibility. Watch for Charlotte here. There's definitely a good chance that maybe Charlotte becomes a landing spot here for Pirtle. They have picks 13 and 15, which does open the door for some potential moves. Moises says, who could you see the Spurs target in the draft with their lottery pick? I think dream case, they get Jalen Duren. But otherwise, another dream opportunity would be Keegan Murray if they don't move up. And they do have 3 firsts, so maybe they're going to try and package some stuff. They also have Josh Richardson, who's a trade asset. Maybe the Lakers will have interest there. They could probably make a few moves. I would actually think that the Spurs are in a really great long-term position because they have DeJounte Murray, who took a massive step forward. I'm still a believer in Keldon Johnson. I think Devin Vassell is really ready to take another step forward as just an overall player. I loved him out of FSU. I think, I was really high on both him and Denny Avdia in that class. I think both of those guys are ready to take steps forward. And I think with Vassell ready, if they're able to make a couple other moves, they could put themselves in a really great long-term position. Mamadou says, everyone sub. Yes, please hit that subscribe button real quick. All of you lovely people in here. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my content. Really appreciate that. We have a great question here. From Walker, he says, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Sohan? And for Sohan here, what I think about him is I think he could be a very good two-way player, but not in the traditional way where we think 3-and-D wing. More so as a filler playmaker who does a lot of stuff, catching the ball in the middle of the floor, making the right read, and then also just a phenomenal positional defender. He's not going to get the most blocks. He's not going to get the most steals. It's not like he's going to average 2 blocks, 2 steals, but he's going to be positionally in the right spot all the time. Coaches are going to quickly fall in love with him. And I think he's going to be a really, really good player. Carson says, hey, the sound just cut out. That's probably an issue on your end. I don't think anyone else is having that issue. Carson, you're the only one who seems to be commenting that. So try refreshing the stream real quick. I says, is it Wembanyama going to USA College or playing in France next year? I believe he's playing in France. I've not heard anything about a commitment to a college. So he'll be staying overseas, but don't worry. I will be covering pretty much everything I see about Victor Wembanyama. Carson here wants to know, could you see the Thunder trading for Ayton? Yes, but they're not going to have a ton to give up in terms of like actual players that Phoenix would maybe want. So it'll be interesting. I could see maybe, a combination of guys like Kenrich Williams and Derek Favors to make the money work. And then you throw in a few first-round picks trying to give Phoenix assets to later move for other players. Isaiah here says, if the Pistons get the first pick, who do you see them picking? What is your thoughts on Max Christie? So Christie actually hired an agent, which is huge because I think that does limit his college eligibility returning, which means he probably feels pretty good about being drafted either in the second round for sure, or potentially even at the back end of the first round, which I had talked about earlier on throughout the draft process. He didn't end the season on a high note for Michigan State, but I still think there's a little bit of unique creation here to him. He's pretty good off the bounce. And he played a lot off the ball for Michigan State, but I think he's capable of a little bit more. So he's a pretty good option here. Joe Tadaro says, thoughts on Kenneth Lofton Jr. being undersized? Should he still get drafted? A month ago, I would have said no. Last night, in a 5-on-5 scrimmage, he actually knocked down a 3-point shot that looked pretty fluid and is a testament to him getting way better. He is a very heavy-set small guy, though. A very big frame. And only about 6'5", which for me is a little bit of a red flag. But for me, with Lofton, if he gets drafted, it's going to be near the back end of the second round. I think he goes undrafted, but we'll see. He's an intriguing prospect. A lot of people talked about him as a first round guy. I never understood that. Of course, those talks have really cooled down since the season started for Louisiana Tech, but he's definitely a solid player. I definitely think he's going to have some type of impact at some point, whether it's in the NBA or, maybe just in the G League. We're going to see him for quite some time. Give Me That says, assuming the Clippers pick stays at 12, do you think OKC packages 12 and 30 to try to move up for Duren or Davis? Probably not 12 and 30. It would have to be 12 and a couple future picks. They have rights to Detroit's future pick. They also have rights to a few other selections, obviously, from the Clippers, and they have some draft picks from the Rockets. They could use other picks to move up, but the 12 and 30 is not going to be enough to move up for Duren, I don't think. Zaytoven says, if Rockets fall to 5, my Wizards sending Rui and 10 to move up. I don't think that the Rockets would take that, unfortunately for you. So that's just kind of my thought on that. I just don't see that really being viable at this point as a potential outcome. Then we're going on here to this next comment. Let me click on it here. Norin Rad asking about Missouri State's Isaiah Mosley. Is he going to make the NBA? Can he stick? Well, for those of you that don't know Isaiah Mosley, he's a 6'5" guard/forward who played for Missouri State. And he's actually got a really good career percentage from both the field, nearly a 50% shooter from the field in his career, and a 41% three-point shooter for his career. Doesn't turn over the basketball a ton, actually passes the ball fairly decently. I still think he needs to grow in that area, and rebounds the ball fairly well. So he's kind of what you look at as a typical college player in terms of a lot of success, impacts the game in a bunch of different ways. The one thing about him is, yes, he's a good three-point shooter, but what is he going to do at the NBA level? Because some of these players who rebound the ball really well as a guard or wing tend to just not do that as well in the NBA because there's more athleticism, more size consistently. I think Mosley can stick, but I don't think he's going to be a very high draft pick. Hugh says, since LeBron has verbally said that he will play wherever Bronny gets drafted, do you think drafting Bronny would be worth a 40-year-old LeBron? I think drafting Bronny is probably going to be worth just drafting Bronny. I think Bronny's going to be a pretty good guard in the league. He shoots the ball fairly well, pretty good playmaker, and is very athletic for a point guard. So for me, I think drafting Bronny, you're more concerned about getting Bronny. But if you're also a team that needs to improve your franchise's stake, you need to probably sell more jerseys, get more fans in the stands. Yes, it is worth getting LeBron in that situation as well. We'll see how much they hide medicals from teams, though, trying to get LeBron somewhere specifically. Steph wants to know, who should Indy take? Indy should look at a few different players. I've answered this one quite a few times, but I know you guys are coming in and out and missing certain things, so I'll answer it again. For Indianapolis, I think they should probably look at a guy like Keegan Murray or Benedict Mathurin, maybe Jalen Duren if they feel like a Miles Turner trade makes sense for them. But overall, I think that's some of the best options. Shaden Sharp as well, I would have my radar on. Lloyd wants to know, if you were the Thunder GM and got the number 1 pick, who would I take? So I'm glad you put the Thunder thing on here because I think Jaden Ivey's the best player in the class. But if I have Shai Gilgeous and Josh Giddey already and Trey Mann and Lou Dort, I would be a little bit more hesitant to take Ivey. At that point, I would probably take Chet or Jabari Smith. I would need to really, really pray to the gods for help on that one because I struggle to decipher between the two which one I'd rather have. I think Chet could become better long term, but I think Jabari's a little bit safer, which for me, it's really tough to reason between those two, and I feel like it's actually a really tough decision because I think both can be really, really good. John Kramer says, what can Pistons get for Jeremy Grant? I think a future first-round pick or a pick outside of the lottery this year. So say like if Charlotte wanted to get involved at 15, they could. Not that that's going to happen or anything, but like that type of range. Dalton says, Thunder up. Glad to see you in here, Dalton. I know you've been commenting on a lot of our other videos as well, so really appreciate that. Give Me That Ox says that their predictions and their hope here is number 1, Oklahoma City from the Clippers. Number 2, the Orlando Magic. 3, Oklahoma City, which this is a potential outcome. They have a chance to be picking in the top 4 twice this year. And San Antonio 4th overall. Definitely interesting because you had 3 teams move up and Orlando stay where they're projected, which is interesting. Max says, can OKC be a team that gives everything and the kitchen sink for Wembanyama next year? No, because you think about it from another team's perspective, why would they want to be the team that gives up Wembanyama, right? Like, this is the issue and the flaw with trying to get all these picks to make trades. You're still going to need another team to agree to the trade. And even if you offer 6 first-round picks to a team, they might say, we're not going to draft a prospect as good as Wembanyama with those 6 first-round picks. Why would we not just take Wembanyama ourselves? And there's really no legitimacy to why they wouldn't. So unless you're throwing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in there and Josh Giddey and everything else, and then even then, what is OKC going to do? Start Wembanyama and Pokashevsky and Trey Mann and Lou Dort and expect to win? Kind of seems a little ridiculous. Elijah Martinez says, I got a good feeling the Spurs are going to move up in this draft. I have that same feeling, Elijah. I feel the exact same way, and I'm not even a Spurs fan. So I just have this gut feeling. Last year I had it about Toronto. I thought Toronto was going to move up, and they did. So I think San Antonio, I have the same feeling. I'm predicting them to get the 4th pick. Carson says, Thunder up. Glad to see that. I hear with another comment, I think Johnny Davis is too slept on. He's been falling, but to me, he looks similar. He looks like a smaller Paulo Banchero, can create within the arc and needs to improve beyond the arc. Right. Well, and you kind of nailed it there. If Paulo Banchero is going 4th overall and you have a smaller version of him who's maybe not as skilled in certain areas, that's why he's falling a little bit outside of top 6 or 7. He's going to go maybe 9, 10, 11 because he's a smaller version of a player who's going to go 4th overall probably. Daquan Johnson says, what is a good comp for AJ Griffin? And that's a good question. For AJ Griffin, let me think about this one for a little bit. AJ Griffin, I kind of want to hear you guys' comparisons for AJ Griffin because we're looking at a 6'6" wing who shoots the 3 ball well. and is going to be a pretty decent positional defender at the NBA level with good athleticism. He's like a little bit more of an athletic Jay Crowder to me, and a little bit better shooter than Jay Crowder. That's kind of what I think of a little bit. Maybe not as strong physically, but there's room for him to grow into that. Elijah Martinez, I lost your comment here, but here it is. Should teams draft for fit or talent? They should draft for talent and then hope that it fits. Unless you're like picking at like 17 or, outside the top 10, you can start picking for fit a little bit more. But if you're picking in the top 10, you need to pick based off of talent and the way that you evaluate players. It's just the reality. Brady says, can't the Timberwolves get the number one pick? No, unfortunately, Brady, they cannot. Good question there, though. Unfortunate, too, that the Vikings didn't end up with Kyle Hamilton there either for you. Chris says, imagine Chet and Pokashevsky on the same team. Would be fun. They'd be really slim and, I don't know, that'd be really questionable. Gold Eagle says Paul George was a sign trade. OKC got picks back from the Clippers. Yes, that is true. No, Paul George was not a sign and trade. Paul George had signed his extension with Oklahoma City, and then the next year had requested a trade, and they actually dealt him. It was not a sign and trade. But we have seen cases in the past where sign and trades do include draft picks. YNCQ, geez, I don't even know the alphabet, says if the Orlando Magic lose out on Chet, Paulo, and Smith, do you think they trade down being that they have so many guards and don't need Ivy, Sharp, or Murray? No, I don't think so, because realistically, Jaden Ivey and Shaedon Sharp are better than anyone else they have on their roster. So, like, you don't worry about the Markelle Fultzes and the Cole Anthonys of the world if you have a Jaden Ivey. You just don't. Jaden Ivey's better than all of them. I think they should just draft the guard then. Mocon says, thoughts on Caleb Houston? It seems like he's gotten a little bit of a promise, honestly, to get drafted. But I'm not sure because he passed on the draft lottery combine or on the draft combine, which was a little weird to me that he did, which makes me feel like he's pretty confident about his positioning. Now, coming out of Michigan, he's a pretty good forward. I think he's solid, but we'll see what happens with him. I think he's an interesting name to watch. Daquan Johnson says, who can you see Orlando picking? I could see him take Jabari Smith or Paulo Banchero or Jaden Ivey. Those are the three players I think more than likely they would take. The Chet Holmgren reunion with Jalen Suggs would be fun. Both of them played together at Minnehaha Academy in Minnesota, but we'll see. Maybe. Mike V says, you are a Spurs fan. Stop it. Let me pull that comment up. That's a funny one. I have never been called a Spurs fan in my life. I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. So San Antonio blood runs a little red to me, but I just have a feeling the Spurs are going to move up. So we'll start the prayer circles now for San Antonio. Gold Eagle 99 says, does OKC have the most lottery picks in the last 14 years? In the next 14 years, yes. They have a ton of lottery picks. Sam Presti's draft history is not phenomenal. Obviously people are going to say, oh, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. Okay, I'm talking outside of the top four. He drafted Serge Ibaka. That one worked out pretty good. Otherwise, we've got some really mixed results. Funny comment here. I am not going to be saying that out loud, though. Nice try, guys. Appreciate the trolls. Keeps the job fresh and easy. Joe says AJ Griffin to the Pistons. Yeah, that's pretty decent comparison. Sadiq Bey, obviously a younger prospect. I think Griffin maybe has a little bit more upside athletically, but the play style is oddly similar. So that's actually a pretty good comp, Joe. Comparison to Herb Jones here, I think that is. I think Herb Jones was way too raw offensively coming into the league. I think AJ Griffin's a little bit further along, better shooter, but I understand the message you're trying to get across there, and I think it's not a bad one. Walker, if Spurs get fourth, are they still taking Ivy even though they have a lot of guards, or do they move down for Keegan Murray? I still think you should take a Jaden Ivey type and just say, this is the best player available. We liked Primo last year. We really like Ivy this year, and you build up your guard depth. That's not bad. It's not bad having a lot of good guards. A lot of people seem to talk like, oh, they already have good guards. Why would they want another good guard? because he's a good guard. Think about some of the best teams in the league right now, like Curry, Clay, and Poole. Like, they've got 3 phenomenal guards, and it works out pretty good. The Suns last year, the big difference from where they got last year to this year was Cam Payne stopped playing like a good guard, and they only had 2 good guards in Booker and Paul. And, Cam Payne kind of fell out in the playoffs in their rotation. Mamadou says, I see a lot of 3, no D from AJ Griffin. I'm not very high on him and have concerns about his athleticism. I get that. And part of that, too, you have to remember he's coming back from an injury, missed some time this season. Give him a little bit of time. I think he's going to get to a point where he is a 3-and-D prospect with decent athleticism. Chase Stern says, do you think it'll be easier to trade up this year? No, I don't. I think this year might be even harder, actually, because there's going to be more guys who teams are like, oh, I really like this guy at 5 or 6 or 7. Like, teams aren't just going to pass on Keegan Murray the opportunity to draft him. Aaron Roy with an AJ Griffin, maybe a little like Vassell. Not bad. I think Vassell did a little bit more off the bounce. But I see kind of the point you're going for there. That's not a bad one either. Oladeep Show says, do you think Ivy and Halliburton could fit? I want the best player, but I'm worried about that fit together. Yes, I do. I really, really do think that could fit. Halliburton and Ivy is probably not the most natural fit, but at the same time, is Halliburton good enough to like win you a finals ever? Yeah, I don't think so. I think Halliburton's a very good player. I think he could end up at some point maybe becoming an All-NBA guy, but I still think you need more talent here. So, I think best player, you go with the talent. And like the nice thing is young players tend to fit better than older players because they tend to like change their style more and work together and try and figure out ways to be successful. Whereas older players are kind of like, yeah, this is what I do. I'm good at this. Give me the ball. Let me do my thing. So I think, as long as Halliburton just seems like a stand-up guy in general. I think he's one of the, better young men in basketball just in terms of his decisions and the way that he carries himself. I think he would be all for an Ivy selection. I think Ivy, very, very passionate player. He just wants to win as well. So I think the two of them would make it work. Gold Eagle wants to know, did you cover Jabari Smith from Auburn yet? I think dude might be a star in the league. Definitely has that upside to him. The one thing is he's got to get better dribbling the basketball. That's really the biggest concern I have for him right now. But for me, like that's what I'm looking at. For him becoming a star, he needs to be able to dribble the ball a little bit more. But defensively, he could become very special. And then offensively, he's a tough shot maker. You can put him in the mid post. He can back down a little bit and hit a nice turnaround over his right shoulder. He's still got to improve over his left shoulder. Or actually, he can hit it over his left shoulder. Needs to improve hitting it over his right shoulder, turning back toward the middle of the floor consistently. There's some things for him to work on, but he's very, very talented. Norin says, what would you do if you were Golden State GM in this draft? If I was Golden State's GM, if I'm Bob Myers, I'm looking for another guard, probably just one more guard for the regular season. Help me out a little bit. And I'm looking for a screening big who can rim run and make good decisions, and that's Trace Jackson Davis, a guy who a lot of people see going in the second round. I could see him sneak into the first round to a team like Golden State because he's athletic, can protect the rim as a weak side guy, probably isn't going to be a true anchor, but when you have Draymond Green, you don't need a true anchor. And you also look at him being a really good screen and roll guard, or big, who can act like a guard once he catches the ball because he's a phenomenal passer with his left hand and can read the floor better than most. Let's go ahead and do another lottery sim here too, just because we've been sitting on the screen for a little bit. So we're going to sim here in 3, 2, and 1. Here we go. Houston stays up number 1. Knicks fans, you get to smile a little bit there. You see the Knicks up to number 2. That's awesome for them. Then you also look at Indiana moves up, Orlando down, Detroit down, Oklahoma City down, and then of course the other teams that were ahead of New York also go down a bit. Definitely an interesting outcome there. Christian here wants to know, what do I think the Knicks will do in the draft? Well, if they move up to number 2 like they did in this mock, they'll go ahead and happily select a guy like Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith. Maybe Jaden Ivey becomes the point guard of the future there. There's definitely some great options. Orlando wants to know, who do you think the Rockets should get? I think the Rockets should probably look at Jabari Smith. or Chet Holmgren. I think that those are the two options that Houston needs to really strongly consider. Great question here. You keep trolling me, KM. I love that. But as a Mavs fan, how does it feel to be the third best franchise team in Texas? It feels pretty good right now because I get to enjoy the Western Conference Finals. So it feels pretty good right now. But I'm sure the play-in was a really nice success story for you guys this year. I'm just playing around a little bit. Chuck Lee says, "You're bad luck for the Kings." Bro, probably if you're talking to me, if I'm jinxing the Kings, I'm sorry, but my prediction here, Kings are moving up to 2 this tonight. We'll see if it happens. Bowser says he was talking about the Pels. Oh, earlier on here, let's see what he was saying about the Pelicans. Here we have a comment. Tell me about it. 504 says, "What does New Orleans do with their pick?" If it stays at 8, I think that they're probably in a position to draft someone who is with pretty good upside, like a Ben Mathurin or Jalen Duren. Those are the 2 players I keep talking about. I would also love to see them take a Jaden Hardy, who kind of is like a little bit of a shot in the dark. Could end up being pretty bad, but at the same time, I think is a player that a lot of people are sleeping on, like Brady's saying here. I think he could be a really, really nice player in the league with really good shot creation potential. Christian wants to know, do you think Mark Williams from Duke would be a steal for whoever gets him? I think he'd be a pretty good pickup. Not necessarily a steal, but I think overall definitely a good player. Here, I says if I did a 2021 redraft, I'd take Herb Jones top 5. I'm going to throw a little bit of caution here to that. Don't take him top 5 last year. The guys who are locks over him still are Cunningham, Green, Mobley, and Barnes. Not in any specific order, but that was the order they got drafted in. Those 4 are definitely above him. Franz Wagner probably would still go above him, I would have to say. And I think there's other players in there as well that you would have to look at and say, Herb Jones was really ready. Remember, he was an older player coming into the draft, so he was more NBA ready. But I think the upside with some of these other guys is a little bit higher. And I love Herb. I was really high on Herb. I had a first-round grade on him last year. I was one of the few people to have that grade on him. I thought he was going to be a sneaky good grab. And I'm fairly vindicated in that because I think he's been really good. Rayan wants to know, where can you watch the lottery? I believe it's on ESPN tonight, but I will live stream during it as well. My plan here is to just stay live for another 15 minutes or so. And if you are noticing any desync with the stream, just go ahead and hit the refresh button too. I do think that helps make sure that everything is going fine with the stream. So just go ahead and check. 11,000 subs, by the way. Thank you guys all so much. We just hit 11,000 subscribers. Really, really do appreciate you guys. Really awesome to see that. You guys are so awesome. Honestly, such a huge thank you to you for all the awesome support you guys have been given us. Let's see here. Carson says, what star would fit great with Luka if you had to choose one? Kawhi Leonard would be the best star next to Luka Doncic. Someone who goes about his business, plays on both ends of the floor, can get a bucket if you need him to. But, that's not realistically ever going to happen. But I think Kawhi and Luka would be the best pairing the league has maybe ever seen, honestly, besides maybe a Kobe and Shaq. And even then, Kobe was a little young at that point and wasn't really at the peak of what he was. But I think that those two together would be absolutely terrifying. Chuck Lee says, if the Kings get a top 4 pick, can the Kings trade the pick and get some of the Kings good players for a good player? I mean, it's possible, but I think if the Kings get top 4, they should probably keep that pick and draft someone. So Bowser here says, I was saying Pels would trade the pick if they get into the top 4, but the more I think about it, the team is getting pretty expensive. Cheap labor is needed now. It is. And the thing is, getting a top 4 player this year is really, really good anyway. So you probably try and recalibrate your roster. And by the time that top 4 player is ready to become a massive star, CJ McCollum, you're probably willing to let him go at that point then, 2, 3, 4 years from now. And then at that spot, you're in a really, really great situation. Josh, the Pels fan, says Malachi Branham's a Cavalier. I could see that. That's a pretty good outcome. Here, Lewis trying to wish some luck on his Pistons, says back-to-back number 1s for Detroit. Definitely a possibility. Max says start, bench, cut, Ivy, Sharp, and Chet. So that's interesting because Chet's obviously not a point guard, or not a guard, but we'll go through it. I'm starting Ivy, benching Chet, and unfortunately cutting Sharp here, which doesn't feel right to say out loud, but out of those three, that's the way I'd rank them. I have Ivy 1 on my board, I have Chet 2 on my board, and I've got Sharp down at 5, which I don't think is low. And had he gone to college, had I seen a little bit more from him this year, I've watched him, I've seen him play, and I'm actually a high school coach myself, so I know how to evaluate high school players. I've, fairly successful. My first year coaching, we went 21-3. But I think that ultimately, for Sharp, it's just a concern taking the jump from the high school level to the NBA level like that. I think he's going to do great. I still have him 5th on my board. That's not low. Post here says, as a Pacers fan, I'm just mad you guys stunk enough to keep your pick. Definitely frustrating for sure. Daniel says, trust as a Spurs fan, you don't want Kawhi and especially Uncle Dennis. I get what you're saying, but I'm talking specifically on the basketball court. Like the dream combination between like the perfect type of player on the floor. So, I get what you're saying with the injuries and the off the court stuff, and I understand Spurs fans why you feel that way. But at the same time, this is a 2-time Finals MVP we're talking about. It's one of the few players in the world that I think can actually guard Luka Doncic and do it well. And I think that if he was on the same team as Luka, that would be raps. Project NBA says, yeah, injuries are why y'all don't have the pick. Definitely a good point there, Nathan. He's talking about the Cavs. Definitely frustrating for sure there with the Pacers not getting that pick. Nathan Drake says, thoughts on Şengün Chet front court? Definitely would be fun and intriguing. Both of them can pass the ball fairly well. And I think that Şengün is actually a sneaky good fit next to Chet Holmgren because he can play more physical. Even though he doesn't look like a super physical player, he's pretty good at boxing out, puts his bodies on guys. He's willing to step in and take charges, take contact. And I think him and Chet next together is an intriguing, talented front court combination. Kush says, stop it. Winning doesn't equal to Dallas. Please don't tell me you're a Cowboys fan too. I'm not. Don't worry. I'm not a Cowboys fan. So I can keep some of my dignity here. Cowboys fans, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But no, I just like the Dallas Mavericks. I was a big Dirk Nowitzki fan growing up. Like I said, I started watching this team when I was like 4 years old. So, at that time, I probably didn't even know who the Dallas Cowboys were when I started cheering for the Mavericks. So, I definitely love the little back and forth here, though. It's definitely fun. Keeps the live stream light. Interesting. So we have some Ben Simmons talk going on in the chat. Always seem to have that going. Jacob says, as a Pistons fan, I want us to get Ivy so bad. Cade Ivy backcourt would be lethal. I agree. If I was the Pistons GM, I would take Ivy. It would be really, really fun today. Definitely funny here. Pauline, I demand today's show host sing. So, okay, just a pretty interesting comment there. Not even sure what to say to that. Elijah says, you're a coach in high school. You look like a high schooler. That's insane. Yes, I know. I'm relatively young. I'm 22 years old only, and I can't grow facial hair to save the life of me. So I do look like a high schooler. But yeah, I'm 22 years old. Got my bachelor's degree already. Considering to go get my master's or my doctorate, but I'm not really sure about that at some point. I actually work in the sports world a little bit right now in a part-time role for a sports networking company. I won't say the name of them, but and I coach high school basketball as well. So I'm very in tune with sports, and I spend a lot of my day doing sports, and I come home and I do YouTube. So definitely fun. I requested today off so I could do this for the NBA draft lottery too, which I'm pretty happy about. I feel like I'm in a pretty good situation for myself that I can take time to do this and talk to you guys. Definitely a Tari Eason fan here with Lama Cabron. Glad to see that lottery pick here. Project NBA says Jaden Hardy to the Cavs wouldn't be bad. I know Cavs fans don't necessarily love that at certain points because they do have Sexton and Garland and they trade for LeVert. But I think his upside is so high that maybe it would be a good pick. Scottie says, do the Kings draft Ivy if he falls to 7? Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Well, actually, is it a no-brainer? Because they just traded Halliburton because they had so many guards. Maybe they would draft him and trade him. I don't know. They would play around with some options. Andrew says, if OKC stays at 4, do they take Ivy as best player available, even if they don't need another guard? A month ago, I would have said no. But right now, I think yes. just because like Sam Presti's looking for talent. So, I think so. Tay says Kings looking for a replacement for Buddy Hield. I think that Mathurin probably ends up in Sacramento. I think Monty McNair knows what he's doing as a drafter. I really do think that. I think him and I actually think fairly similarly when it comes to draft evaluation. Now, I would never have made the Halliburton trade. I'll be honest about that. But I think they're looking for a Buddy Hield replacement, and I think they're going to get a good one in Benedict Mathurin. If they don't move up in the lottery tonight, I ultimately think Benedict Mathurin will be a Sacramento King. Daniel says, if I'm the Charlotte's GM, I would look to trade the 13th pick over the 15th pick because it technically has more value, and the Hornets still can get one of Sohan, Williams, or Kessler at 15. That's a good point, and probably a realistic outcome. The only thing, though, is if you do open yourself up to trading 13 and not 15, maybe a team looks at you and says, oh, they want Williams or Kessler here. Cleveland doesn't want Williams or Kessler. Maybe if we're picked 17 or 18 or 19, maybe we can trade up with a few other assets to go get 14 from Cleveland, who probably doesn't have anyone super circled at that spot that they wouldn't hate to move down. And then you maybe sacrifice the guy you want to get because of that. Mike V says, if you were my high school basketball coach, I'd dunk on you. I keep taking these L's from Spurs fans. What's going on today, Spurs fans? Look at my prediction. I put you guys in the top 4. I might have to change that. I'm trying to wish some good luck on you. And then all stream today, I'm getting told I'm getting dunked on and that I'm probably a Cowboys fan. You guys keep trash talking me. What's going on with that? No, I love it though, guys. You guys have been awesome. Elijah says if we sign Lonnie, of course. Lonnie, we'll see what happens with him. Awesome says, if the Blazers end up with the 8th pick, do they try to trade back into the top 4? No, I don't think so. If anything, they'll probably shop around pick 8 a little bit, and then maybe just look to take a guy and then make some other moves as well. Mike says, I see the Kings getting AJ Griffin or Johnny Davis. Definitely love that too, Mike. I mean, both of those are good options. Johnny Davis, probably not as good of an option as Griffin, in my opinion, just because of the shooting around Sabonis and Fox, but I could see it. Bowser says, man, I just turned 26 and I'm finally getting the courage to chase a dream in the sports world, so kudos to you doing it at 22. Well, thank you so much, Bowser, and I'm hoping for you too. Let's hopefully both get there together. I'm hoping you get there, and I'm certainly hoping I get to a point where I feel really, really happy. At some point, I want to work for an NBA team, whether that's as a scout or a coach or a development personnel guy, or ultimately the dream job as a GM. We'll see. That's obviously a big, lofty goal, but I'm just trying my best, take it day by day, and get to a point where maybe you get taken seriously at some point. We'll see. Ice Cold Skittle says, you see any chance of that Paulo being a bust if he can't get a consistent 3 and improve on the defensive end? To me, he's a weird fit in the NBA right now. No, I don't think so, because I think the mid-range game is actually one of the most important elements to all of basketball. You think about how teams try and cover defense, or how defenses try and cover players right now. It's good hard closeouts on the 3-point line and protect the rim. That's pretty much every single team's philosophy. If you can have good contained closeouts and force a lot of 3-point shots, you're doing good. If you're getting decent contests on them, and you do not want to give up shots at the rim. And luckily, Banchero is like, okay, fine. I'm not going to shoot those threes, and I'll get to the rim and I'll finish through contact. I'm pretty good at that, but fine, give me the mid-range. And teams are going to have to really counteract that. They're going to have to focus on dialing in on the mid-range shot, which is different. It's definitely a different style of play, and I think it's going to actually breed some pretty good success for Banchero offensively. Kush says, because Mavs are boo-boo, Warriors in 5. Okay, now he's going to definitely be cheering against me. Glad to see that as well. A lot of people were saying that too about the Suns in 5. We'll see. Maybe that's our good luck charm here, Kush. I'm going to actually star this one so I can come back to it later maybe. Love that. Trap Nap says New Orleans. Any Baldwin talk? If you're talking about Patrick Baldwin, I think he's a second-round pick. I just don't see him being worth a first-rounder, just given what he's showcased. He definitely did improve this year at Milwaukee, did a little bit more stuff on ball, but realistically at the NBA level, I think he's exclusively an off-ball player. Daniel says, I have the same dream. I plan to go for my master's in sports management after finishing my bachelor's. Daniel, what are you getting your bachelor's in? I'd love to hear, and good luck on that as well. Good luck getting your master's. And make sure you guys are staying around the comments. The one thing too is I actually do really care what you guys, what else you have going on in your life. I'm actually really enjoying hearing about what you guys are doing and everything. So I'd love to bounce ideas off. Remember, I do have my Instagram in the bio today as well, so go give me a follow on there. And if you ever feel like talking about something, or maybe you're having a tough time, or whatever it is, feel free to reach out to me. And I feel like I do a pretty good job responding. Also have the Utility Sports Instagram and Twitter and TikTok in there as well, so go give us follows on there. I do respond on those as well. So just if you ever feel like you want to talk about something, or you want to just kind of see how everything's going with me, or whatever you want, just I'm putting it out there as a potential option. But good luck again, Daniel, on that. Max says, could Patrick Mahomes fall to 5 in any world or nah? That's a funny comment there, Max. In a redraft, it depends. If the Chicago Bears are picking the first 4 spots, then yes, then Mahomes would probably fall to 5, but otherwise, no. Golden Shovel Play says, do you think OKC will take Mark Williams at 12 if he's available? I think they definitely would strongly consider it. I've done that in some of my mocks. I think it's worthwhile to consider. Zhao says, what moves do you see the Hawks making this offseason? Trade up, keep the pick, or trade it? For the Hawks this offseason, I think that they would probably just keep their pick where they're at, or maybe use it in a Capella move to get Gobert. I could see that as a potential outcome. Trap Nap says, do you think the Pels can jump up to the top 4? It's definitely a possibility. 26% chance they move up, so it's not bad. Reese says, what level did you play basketball to? And this is a really good question, and one I'm sure maybe some of you are interested in. I actually do have some video of me playing basketball up on my own personal Instagram. If you do want to go check those out, again, follow me on my Instagram. Link is in the description for that. I will be accepting all follow requests. But for what level I played at, I actually went to a little bit of a bigger school for college. So I did not play in college. I probably could have played at the D3 level somewhere, I'm guessing, for smaller schools and stuff like that. I'm not the most athletic guy. Honestly, I actually was able to dunk for the first time as a 21-year-old. So I kind of peaked a little bit later physically in terms of athleticism. But I'm like 6'2", so I'm not like super tall or anything like that. I'm like your average guard height, and I was pretty solid. I don't know. I really butted heads with my high school coach. I played varsity high school basketball, obviously. I averaged about 7 assists a game, 7 rebounds, and about 7 points. I shot about 4 times a game only. And part of that was because my high school basketball coach and I just did not get along very well. He had ideas for a 1980s offense where we ran through the post. And interestingly enough, the guy who was on my high school basketball team is actually in the NFL right now, which is funny. He actually got signed as an undrafted free agent this past draft. But, I didn't average a lot of points. I didn't shoot the ball a ton, but I did average quite a few assists. I was pretty good as a passer. I feel like I read the floor pretty well. So that was kind of my biggest strength for sure. So Mike says, can't wait to see your mock draft tomorrow, bro. Keep up the good work. Glad you are enjoying. I'm so excited for that mock draft. Remember, keep it secret here. NBA mock draft coming out tomorrow morning. Really, really excited for that one. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. I'm excited to see how the lottery shakes out. It's going to really change what the mock drafts look like, I'm sure. Mr. C-Jock says, if you're the Thunder, assuming you get a top 3 pick, do you go after a guy like Kessler with the Clippers pick? Yes, Kessler or Mark Williams. If you have any way of moving up for Durant, I would do that. But ultimately, yes, like you need to find a center. Daniel says math. Oh no, sorry Daniel. I came to the realization of going into sports management after I chose my major. Hopefully internship can help me get more experience once I'm closer to my master's. Right, and that's the thing. So right now I'm working at a sports company, right now, sports television, and I actually got my bachelor's degree in Spanish teaching. So I have a teaching license. Currently I'm not teaching. I just graduated in December with that. So I'm a recent grad. Somewhat recent, almost half a year ago already, but like you don't necessarily have to have majored in the thing that you want to go into. Having a bachelor's degree is going to open up a lot of pathways for you. So it's all about leaving good impressions on people when you meet them, working hard and really trying to prepare yourself to do what you want. And for me, I spend a lot of time with the NBA draft. I spend a ton of my resources and effort on it. And I feel like at some point, I hope it pays me back. So that's kind of the goal here for me. Mike V says Mark Williams to the Hornets would be cool with the lobs from LaMelo. Definitely agree with that. Would be good. Bowser says, as much as I hate the Knicks because of them not giving up hope for Zion, they have to be due to jump up in the lottery. Yes, they have not jumped up for a long time. Maybe it's a little bit of karma since Patrick Ewing. Let's go ahead and sim another lottery here in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Here we go. Houston picking first overall. Indiana jumps up to 2. Oklahoma City at 3. Sacramento moves up to number 4. Definitely interesting. Remember, my predictions are on the bottom. Rockets 1, Kings 2, Pistons 3, and Spurs 4. Brother Hoskins, welcome to the stream. He says, I'm nervous, hoping the Pistons get a good draw. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. We'll see. Did I major in sports management? No, I did not. I majored in Spanish teaching. So, Chase Stern wants to know what team my friend went to. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed him, actually as an undrafted free agent, which is really, really funny. He's a pretty big dude. He's about 6'5" and 260 pounds. So he's a little bit of a big guy. When I was in high school, my senior year, I actually graduated high school as a 17-year-old. I was young for my class. And I was about 6'1" when I graduated and about 170 pounds. So I was a pretty light guy. And I still averaged about 6 or 7 rebounds a game. I was a little bit quicker than I am now. I've slowed down a little bit. I'm up to about 210 or so. So I'm a little heavier. I've also gained an extra inch of height though. So maybe that's where all that weight came from, right? Mark here says, how high of a pick do you think Brogdon or Turner could net in the trade? What about Hield? Turner could probably get you 13 or 15 from Charlotte. Brogdon probably in the 20s, I would have to guess. Here, Aiken says, not sold, and Kessler seems more like a regular season player. He probably is, and I understand the criticism, but let's remember here, 14 teams this year, the teams that are in the lottery, would have loved to be a playoff team. So you have to get to the playoffs to have a playoff issue, and a lot of these teams right now just don't have playoff issues because Houston, Indiana, OKC, Sacramento, Orlando, Detroit, Portland, these teams have issues that they're not making the playoffs. So that's what I'm saying. Michael Orlando says, bro, I feel like Tankathon moves teams up with worse odds into the top 4 than giving the top 4 the more likely odds. Yeah, this is not a perfect, simulation. It's not a perfect recipe. It's all kind of random. Because you want to hear my top 10 for my big board right now? Definitely can pull that out here. Let's go ahead. Number 10 right now, and this is going to ruffle some feathers here in this chat. I know it's going to. Number 10, Jaden Hardy, G League Ignite. I've got him 10th overall on my board. Number 9, I've got Keegan Murray here at this spot. I think he's an awesome player. Don't get me wrong. I think this draft is really, really good. AJ Griffin at 8. At 7, I've got Benedict Mathurin, which pains me because I want to have him higher, but I just can't. I really like Ben Mathurin. I really, really like Ben Mathurin. 6, I've got Shaden Sharp, which again, now this is maybe where people are going to say, whoa, you don't have him 5. What's going on? Jalen Duren, I've got him 5th. I look at him like Bam Adebayo. I think he's going to become a special defensive player who is going to be good in a bunch of different schemes. I think he's got really great hand-eye coordination, which no one's really talking about. Really great strength. He's going to rebound the basketball at an elite level. What he did to UCF this year should be a sign of things to come against small ball teams, where he had a 20-20 game in college, which that just never happens. He was so dominant at certain points this past year from Memphis. I think he's got a lot of upside as well as a playmaker. I think he's really going to be phenomenal. And I'm glad to see at least one person loves the Duren hype. 4, Paulo Banchero. Again, I think this is low. This feels low to me to have Banchero 4, but it's my own big board. And the reason why I have him there is I think there's some more limitations on his upside in terms of his athletic profile, what he's going to be defensively, and what his three-point shot ultimately translates to. Jabari Smith, I have at 3. Again, this feels low to me. I think a lot of years Jabari Smith would have been my number 1 prospect. Probably not last year over Cade, but Jabari Smith's an awesome prospect. I think he's a really, really good player. Chet Holmgren, I have at 2. And then at 1, I have Jaden Ivey, who I just think in today's league probably fits the best in terms of being your go-to guy. I think just a ball handler who's going to be great in pick and roll, can beat his guy off the bounce whenever he wants to, has really great burst, can go from fast to slow to fast, can go from slow, fast to slow, can slow his body down. I think both of those, I think the top 10 is really, really talented. Notable exclusions were Johnny Davis, who I had at 11. I think he's right here, this close with Jaden Hardy for me. And then Jeremy Sohan, who I think, if I was a GM who really needed to get better defensively, I would probably take Sohan over an AJ Griffin or over a Jaden Hardy, maybe even over a Benedict Mathurin, which I would be really hard pressed to do that. But like, I could see Sohan realistically being 8th on my board as well. So they're all really, really close to each other. I've spent so much time watching it. I'm talking literally like hundreds of hours watching these players. But it's been worth it. I've loved it, and I feel like, it's helped me bring a lot of really good content here for Utility Sports. Gerald Perry says, I like Duran too. I think Pistons should think about him if we fall to the top 4. Definitely would be in consideration, I think. Gold Eagle, they could fetch a first-round pick, but a team with a bad record may be hesitant. I agree. Norin says Kamagate and Soto are being slept on. Kamagate's had some really dominant performances over in Paris, for sure. He has a bunch of 9-block, 10-block games. The crazy thing is, you would think that he's super athletic with some of those performances. A lot of it's just positional IQ. I think he's a very smart defender. I think he's going to be a really, really good grab. I says Jaden Hardy is definitely top 10. Good efficiency towards the end of the G League Ignite Tour. Yeah, he picked up his play. And people don't realize, he's a 19-year-old kid playing against pro players for the first time in his career. There's going to be some struggles. We're talking about a 12-game sample size. I think he's going to be nice in the NBA. Brother Hoskins says, is anyone streaming tonight? Lottery on YouTube. I will be streaming. I will not be putting the actual NBA draft lottery itself on the screen, but I will have the audio. So you'll be able to hear the audio for the draft lottery. And I'll be giving my live reaction for that. But just because of copyright, restrictions, I legally cannot actually put that on YouTube. Gary says, if the Rockets pick Jaden Ivey at number 1, I will become a Mavs fan. Wow, interesting. Well, Gary, if that happens, I'll be the first one to welcome you in to the Mavs cult. Jacob says, Paulo Banchero or Jabari Smith Jr. I think Jabari's better, but narrowly. Elijah says, I think teams in the top 10 picks would be content with whoever they draft. A lot of talent. I agree. There's a lot of really good players. Mamadou says, I definitely think Davis will be better than Hardy and Griffin, and Sohan over Murray for me. So interesting. Okay. So a little bit of a unique board there. Davis, I'm just naturally a little bit lower on. I think he's good. I just do have my own little bit of concerns with the way that his game's going to adjust to the NBA 3-point line specifically. Awesome says, who do the Spurs reach for in the first round this year? Well, last year was Primo, right? They reached on Primo. Not that Primo's bad. I thought Primo's a pretty solid player. I was just surprised they took him when they did. This year, let me go look down. Maybe they reach at an EJ Liddell, which I actually think wouldn't be a terrible pick. But if Murray's off the board, maybe they do that. Ivy, I have him at 1. I have Ivy at 1. Mick Werder. Gold Eagle says the Pacers could use a Jabari Smith. Making up for this bonus trade would be huge for them. But Thor says, hoping the Pacers get a top 4 pick tonight. Who would you / do you think they'd pick with the number 1 pick? If I'm picking number 1, just given I'm Indiana, it would be for me between Ivy and Holmgren and Smith. I mean, again, that's not really game-breaking analysis there. That's just any 3 of them you could realistically go with. I think they're all awesome. And then who they would actually take, I think they would probably take Jabari Smith is who I think they would actually take. But again, I love Jaden Ivey, so I probably would want to take him. But again, I mean, I wouldn't be mad about the others. I am going to conclude the stream here. I've been live for over 3 hours, and my throat is actually really killing me right now. Again, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to rest up. I will be live streaming again for the NBA draft. So again, that's just about 2.5 hours away. You see right here, draft lottery starts in 2 hours, 56 minutes. Let's actually finish here on one last sim. Let's finish on one last sim here. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying. If you have, make sure to hit that like button on today's live stream and also subscribe to the channel for more. And we're going to reset it here. And in 5, when this hits 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Simulate, and let's see. Detroit, Indiana, Sacramento, Orlando, Houston, OKC, Portland, Pelicans, San Antonio, Washington, New York, the Thunder again via Clippers. Today is a huge day. Today is such a big day. I hope you guys have enjoyed the stream. Thank you all so much for hanging in here. Thank you all so much for the kind words. I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. Smash that like button. Subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. We'll see how everything goes. Tonight, I will be again live streaming, and we'll have more NBA draft content coming out tomorrow, including a fun, fresh NBA mock draft. Go follow me on Instagram. Go follow Utility Sports on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram as well. Thanks again, guys, so much for watching. You have a nice rest of your day, and we'll catch you for the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. Make sure to come back, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see ya.